Agendas for study sessions, including concept reviews, can be found by visiting Broomfield's website at broomfield.org. Before we proceed with tonight's agenda, I will be turning over the gavel to the Mayor Pro Tem to preside over this topic. I will be absent for next week's meeting and wanted to give the Mayor Pro Tem an opportunity to preside over a meeting prior to my absence. So, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yes.
That doesn't go there right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. We have a great study session topic, one that's been very important to me, and I've been doing this for a number of years and looking forward to hearing the presentation tonight. So our agenda this evening includes one item, which includes, it's going to be both a supplemental concept review as well as a project update. So it's going to be sort of two different things that we're dealing with. And due to the concept review components, I am going to be asking for public comment on this item. The public may attend tonight's meeting and future council meetings in person at the George DeCiro City and County Buildings, City Council Chambers, right here, located at 1 Discombs Drive. Or you may watch it live on Channel 8 and through live streaming on our website. The public may also participate in public comments, either in person or by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 on your telephone. That will place you in the queue for comments. Public comment tonight will be limited to 90 minutes for the entire item. And individuals attending in person here will be asked to speak first. The first 15 participants in the queue will have 3 minutes to speak. If we have more than that, 16 to 25 participants will have 2 minutes, and any remaining participants will have 1.5 minutes. Again, if you are joining us virtually tonight for public comment, the number is going to be 855-695-3744. And again, press *3 to be placed in the queue. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name, neighborhood, and the agenda item the caller would like to comment on, which is only one item tonight. And we do ask you to call several minutes before the agenda item and press that *3 to ensure that you're in the queue. And if you are joining us in person tonight, you will be asked to come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. So, getting all that out of the way, the only item tonight for council review is as we mentioned, a supplemental concept review. And this is submitted by Broomfield Town Square Alliance, LLC. This is going to include the future phases of our Broomfield Town Square mixed-use developments. Council first discussed this phase of the project at the May 26, 2020 study session. For this supplement to the concept review and project update, we're going to follow our city standard procedures for concept plan reviews. First, we are going to have our lovely staff, present a summary of the application in partnership with the applicants. And then we're going to take comments from members of the Land Use Review Commission, if they are here, or any other interested advisory boards. Then the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. And finally, we will take questions and comments from City Council. As usual, electronic copies of the concept review plans are available at the broomfieldvoice.com. Copies of the comments provided for each plan at the broomfieldvoice.com have been provided to City Council and can be found by clicking the corresponding link at the bottom of tonight's agenda. So we will begin with our staff summary and presentation. Council members have a copy of the agenda memorandum for this proposal, and this evening the staff presentation again will be combined with the applicant presentation, which I will ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, council, and good evening, community. This is a long-awaited conversation. Broomfield has been working on this for about, 9 years now. It's been a long time. And so tonight is the culmination of many meetings, particularly recently, where concept that's always the fun part, the design, what it could be, what it should be, community feedback. And then you get into the site plan submittals, concept reviews, and really the financing. We know council has had a lot of conversations in the past and will have many more to come with regards to finance for Broomfield. We have the applicant here tonight. I just saw Joe walk in, Joe Bostrich. He's going to be presenting, and again, it's an unusual presentation in that generally staff does not present or integrate our presentations. Generally, when we're doing concept reviews, again, this is as Mayor Pro Tem indicated tonight, that it's a hybrid approach, if you will. So the applicant tonight will be laying out phase 1 and phase 2. Lynn, Merwin, our principal planner, will be introducing the item and kind of walking through the first couple of pieces. Mr. Bostrich will go through the vision and the concept, some pretty good graphics. Council has the link of the presentation right now. We will also be putting that link of the presentation on Broomfield Voice tomorrow morning. And our economist and business development director, Jeff, just to have a light moment, we have a nickname for Jeff. We call him Jeff Thunder Romine. So we have been calling him Thunder recently, so I got caught up on that. My apologies now. Everyone knows that the inside joke, make it thunder instead of make it rain. And with that, again, it's been a partnership. The only way that this project being so new and the concept being new, each one of the pieces being something that Broomfield has not seen before, really does require a deep level of engagement, partnership, respect, and a back and forth. And with that, I would like to introduce Lynn Merwin, the principal planner. She will begin to walk us through this item.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Good evening, council and our borough member this evening. Could we go to slide 3, please? Thank you. So this aerial map highlights the overall Broomfield Town Square property, the property location in yellow. The northern parcel is generally bounded by East First Avenue on the south, Main Street on the west, Dickham Drive on the north, and Spader Way on the east. And then the southern parcel is the former Safeway store and primarily the parking lot that runs before it. The property is approximately 40 acres altogether. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, before I go on, the future phases are highlighted in the hatching and the orange, big orange labels. Next slide, please. So the properties are collectively zoned PUD for town center or civic center and retail. The comprehensive plan vision for the area has long anticipated a civic center, and what we refer to now as the Broomfield Town Square. Comprehensive plan, the land use map amendment is required to align the land use plan with the overarching goal to create a town square. Next slide, please. So this map is provided for a little bit of background and context on the project. So in May of 2020, our development partner, the Broomfield Town Square Alliance, presented a concept plan for the initial phases of the proposed development. The prior concept focused around a highly amenitized plaza north of East First Avenue and an enlarged lake with a trail around the perimeter and amenitized public spaces depicted along the way. Public spaces were conceived to promote gathering for passive and active purposes, enjoying the energy through the retail, dining, and innovative workplace offerings, and as well for lingering, such as strolling around the lake and discovering points of interest. This plan depicted 3 mixed-use buildings framing the public plaza just north of East First Avenue and around that southern end of the lake, that narrow part. In this initial concept plan, townhomes are shown fronting the east side of Main Street And south of East First Avenue, we see the plans showing the reimagination of the Safeway building as a market hall. The prior concept plan included 483 residential units, including one building intended for age-targeted or senior living. The development agreement for the property includes an affordable housing requirement that 20% of the units will be provided on site as affordable, or in the alternative as a cash in lieu fee. Approximately 80% or 80,000 square feet of commercial uses such as food, beverage, and retail is planned on the ground floor of the mixed-use buildings located north of East First Avenue and in the future market hall south of First Avenue. Parking in this initial plan is shown in a combination of surface parking lots, on-street, and in structured parking that is integrated into the buildings to serve tenants, patrons, and visitors. The initial phase of the development is now in the formal development review process. Engineering studies are under review for traffic, parking, utilities, drainage, etc. And the development plans include a PUD plan with the custom zoning, a subdivision plat, and the site-specific development plan. Next slide, please. Transitioning to the current application for concept plan review, this plan builds on the prior 2020 concept to show the locations, the proposed future phases outlined in the magenta color. This plan is the primary focus of consideration this evening. The proposal is for approximately 327 potential residential units spread over 2 to 3 new buildings, including one north of East First Avenue and 1 to 2 mixed-use buildings south of Safeway, just north of 120th Avenue. The application notes there could be a mix of similar scale office and retail buildings framing up the south side of East First Avenue, or a hotel could potentially be proposed in place of one of the mixed-use buildings along 120th. The mixed-use buildings anticipate approximately 40 to 90 square feet of additional ground floor retail for a total of approximately 120 to 170 square feet of commercial development with all phases. All of the larger buildings would integrate structured parking within the buildings, and our development partners will speak further to the details and show some of the newly developed renderings for the future phase as part of their presentation. Next slide, please. So before I turn it over to Joe Vostris, I would just note that the public notice requirements have been met for this public meeting, with signs posted on the property, notices mailed to property owners. We've added a post to next door, and of course we have a Broomfield voice page. And so with that, I will turn it over to Joe. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Joe Vostris here with City Street Investors. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to talk about this project that we've all been working on for so long. It has been a fantastic partnership with the city and the county working on this project. The whole team's been fantastic, and we are in fact bringing this long desired project to light. I know many of you have been hearing about it for years and wondering, is it ever going to be here? But we are making great progress now, and are really looking forward to updating you both with the phase 1 of the project, which is the part that we've all been focusing on for the past several years, as well as the future phases of the project. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce the rest of our team that's here. Miller White is our joint venture partner on this project, here represented by Tim Frederick. There's Tim, and the planners on the project who came up with this great design are also here. Chris Carrizo and Craig Vickers over here, and also with CSI is Radhika Mohanty, Broomfield resident over here, keeping an eye on things for us. So I thought we'd start with just a little bit of quick background. Many of you have heard some of what I'm going to have said before, but some of you may have not. So let's move to the next slide. So actually, do we have the slide that has the guiding principles? I think this is one might be a little more helpful. So when we very first got invited to work on this project, we did a very, very deep dive with the community, where we engaged a whole bunch of residents, business owners, variety of stakeholders, and we spent hours and hours and hours with these folks. We did surveys, we did visual preference studies. We really delved very, very deep into the needs and desires that the community had for this project. And what came out of that was a set of guiding principles as well as some uses. So you can see the guiding principles up here, but this signature town square that would be uniquely Broomfield was really at the top of the list. Something that Broomfield residents, business owners here would point to and say, this is something very, very special for Broomfield that really no one else has. And so it had to have an iconic quality to it, something that made it very special and immediately recognizable, the kind of thing that you could take a picture of it, somebody go, I know exactly where that is, that's Broomfield, Colorado. That was at the top of the list and was a very difficult challenge to overcome. We think we have, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But along with that was the idea that there would be this traditional town square, a gathering place for the residents to just come, see each other, and really feel like their community had a distinctive place and a heart, a real there. And of course, it had to interconnect with the neighborhoods and the paths and the bike paths, and really have it firmly knitted into the neighborhood. Along with that was, the encouraged healthy lifestyle, the pedestrian nature of it, the lingering and walking around. And so those guiding principles were all listed and put into a document along with all of the desired uses that were identified, some architectural preferences, and rather than us try and just figure out what all that meant in terms of the physical manifestation of the project, there was a design competition held. And we asked 4 firms to present. All we gave them was this document. We didn't tell them how big it should be or how many units it should have or anything like that. They just said, read the documents and turn it into a vision. And that design competition resulted in what you're seeing today, because one firm really came forward and checked all the boxes. So what's the next slide? I can't remember. So the design really took the land and went through the focus group results, the outreach results, and then started saying we have to come up with something that manifests all of this. And that's really what you see here in phase 1 is the construction of a lake, the narrowing of the lake down to a town square, double-sided retail, which is very important. We'll talk about that more. And spaces for all the desired uses, space for the beer garden, space for unique boutiques, spaces for food and beverage establishments that would all be waterfront under this plan, and really provide a superb pedestrian and strolling and lingering experience. Along with that, the market hall, the old Safeway building, turned into a market hall that will have incubator space in it and space for lots of small local tenants, and really accomplished a lot in terms of checking all of those boxes. So here you've got in phase 1, you see the lake. In the part that you're looking at in the top photo, sort of that narrowing point as you look generally south towards the Safeway building. You can see that there's opportunities to sit on the steps, dangle your feet in the water, linger, and then the reverse below picture, you see, looking out at the plaza itself, the town square itself, with the water feature there, the little splash pad for the kids to play in. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide. So actually, before we're going to talk about this one in just a second, but I think that, one of the topics that has come up on this is why the lake. We've had a number of people say, well, why the lake? Why is there a lake here? The lake is the keystone that holds this whole project together. And I just want to be super clear about that. As we struggle to figure out how to make this thing work, this is not a superb retail location. it had a lot of challenges, and our team was really intimidated by what we got out of the focus groups. Like, how are we going to make this a reality, and how are we going to make it financially sustainable? You know, that it can last for 100 years and be a financially sustainable project. Huge challenges in a tough location. This is not a traditional retail location. And so as we had to solve for that problem, as well as making sure that we checked all the boxes from the public's desires for the project, and we again put that out to the design competition. When we saw the design competition and that the lake being set in the center of this, the light bulb just went off. And we said, this is the missing piece of the puzzle. Because with this, we create an amazing place where the stickiness, the strolling can really take place. Recreation can take place in a very special way that would be difficult to duplicate. We're giving our local tenants that we want here waterfront real estate, for crying out loud. I mean, that really helps them be successful in the long run. And also in the residential, these residential units of many are going to have water and mountain views. So really boosted the project in terms of making sure that not only that it met all the criteria we'd laid out for it, but it gave us confidence that this would be a financially viable, sustainable project for the long term. And of course, part of this project is not just the phase one, but there's had always from the beginning been, that knowing that we were going to have to build on phase one. And Lynn walked you through the phase two vision, which of course has not gone through the same level of detail and design as phase one, of course. So there's much work to be done on phase two, but it's important to the overall plan and to the zoning that we get at least the bones in place for this now. And I love this picture in particular, this rendering, which shows a new building across the street from the library where the asphalt parking lot is now. This building would provide the same amount of parking for the library, plus, of course, parking for the residents there. But what it does is it takes what is sort of a one-sided experience with a parking lot on one side, and it creates this lovely pedestrian zone that you see here. You can just imagine how pleasant it would be to walk down the street. You can't see it very well, but the lake is actually in the background of the street there, and it's just going to be a building on the overall concept of making sure that we create just a fantastic retail or a pedestrian experience. This really hits it out of the park in terms of that happening. Next slide. The parking lot in front of the Safeway building posed, a real challenge to us. As we think about the market hall and we think about phase one of the project, here our project is spaced on 120th with a gigantic asphalt parking lot, just a sea of asphalt out there. Not what you really want for your downtown and town square experience that we've been working on. And there were a few things that we really wanted to accomplish out of the original sort of checklist of things that we wanted. And one of them was to really have all the retail that was desired. Phase one is really checking the boxes in terms of some boutiques and food and beverage. But there were a lot of services and other types of uses that were really desired that we want to make sure that we'd be eventually able to have room for. This will help do that. And it will really extend this pedestrian experience in a very special way as it relates to art, which we're going to talk about more in a minute. But what you see here are these mixed-use buildings. The one on the left potentially could be a hotel under what we propose. Obviously, no decision made on that at this point since it's conceptual. But the idea of creating this incredible doorway and this grand entrance, if you will, to the entire project. And so these buildings are, set apart. They're moved out to the street. You'll really be able to see them as you move up and down 120th. But then there's just this wonderful, like magnetic draw through this this beautiful art walk in between the in between the two buildings, and then down across into the market, the new market building where the Safeway is now. And you can continue, as you know, we moved that. If you look at the Safeway building, you see that it's been cut in two. That's actually part of the phase one. You would have seen that. So now you can have this experience of moving from 120th through this building, through the Safeway building, the Market Hall, down the Broomfield steps, which are going to be a fantastic place to hang out and just look at the views, across first and then into the town square, and then ultimately you could wander around the lake. So what you can't see very well in this picture is that these buildings on their backsides, if you will, the part that faces Safeway, this is another two-sided retail experience. And this is one of the places where we'll be able to, check the boxes in terms of some of the services and retail uses that we still need to make sure that we provide. So you get this fantastic experience of being able to, walk through here, take a right, wander around to two-sided street to the left, go back through the Market Hall, and then really creating almost like a Main Street type of experience where we really have a, old style, parking lot with, one strip of retail. So really an extension of the overall concept. Buildings parked, of course, both for whatever the uses are, as well as making sure we maintain the more than adequate parking for the Market Hall and for the retail that exists there now. Let's see, next slide. So wanted to talk a little bit about art. So art was identified early on in all the outreach and focus groups that we did, that it was just had to be an essential part of this project. And for us, that was more than a few pieces of public art scattered around. It was really wanting to infuse the entire project with art as part of the overall experience, and have it be dynamic enough that it's something you return for again and again. It changes, and it becomes a palette or a canvas, and that you can choose from a palette of programming and objects and things to keep it relevant and fresh and stimulating basically forever. So these are just some inspirational images to look at, to think about how color and just creative use of the surfaces, things overhead, all the opportunities that we're going to have with what has been designed. So we are planning a very significant budget for the acquisition of public art, and want the feeling of art, the whole project to just be imbued with art as you move throughout it. So you can imagine now in its fullness with phase one and phase two that this is a place where it's now big enough and interesting enough. I don't think you can do it in a day, which is one of the things I was we're concerned about on these kinds of projects. We always used to struggle with that with Larimer Square when I ran it for 25 years, and it's one block long, and people would do it and go, "Wow, that was really cool," but that's it. Where this is with the programming and the lake, and you really almost can't do it in a day. So it offers you this constant opportunity to come back and re-enjoy this very, very special thing that's been created at the heart of the city. So next slide. So the mixed use building, of course, one of the things this also got identified very early is please reuse the sign. And you can see here, we found a place for it, a very prominent place for it on the corner of the building that's right out on 120th. It's going to be fun to repurpose that sign and get it back out. And it's funny because this was called the heart of Broomfield. That sign, that's what was on it, and in fact, that's what we're really doing now. It's really creating a real heart, and a fairly dense, fairly defined space that can really be what people think of when they think of, coming to Broomfield. So happy we're able to do that. The next slide. So I think this is what I hand it off to my partner, Tim, who's really leading the, a lot of the technical side of the stuff. They, working closely with the engineers in the city and our various consultants. So he's going to talk about some of the technical issues that we're dealing with and the progress that we've made on them. I'm sure I have missed something, and of course we're pleased tonight that hopefully we'll have enough time to be able to answer any questions. I'm sure there's a bunch that come up, and our team's here and ready to answer that. So with that, Tim.
Thanks, Joe. I love that Joe gets the art and the placemaking and all the cool stuff. I get like schematics and numbers. That's kind of our shtick. Joe's the placemaking specialist here, having managed Main Street retail for our career, and I've got a degree in engineering and an MBA, and that's kind of what I do. So proud to be Joe's partner here and just give you an update. We haven't stepped off the gas on this project. The fun stuff with the vision, that was a lot of that already baked. Now it's into the details, which means studies, engineering, reports, which are all underway, have been completed for the most part for the first phase. There will be additional studies with any future phases that come, but since we saw you last, we submitted in late January, with January 31st, and since then we've received comments on our first submittal, the SDP and the PUD from the planning department. We've taken a few months to react to those comments, moving detention ponds, adjusting the floodway, floodplain, alignment, etc., updating our engineering studies, completing additional studies, including a noise study. So again, not the most exciting content. One additional step we've taken is engagement with an art consultant named 9 Arts, which is everybody's explored the Dairy Block in Denver. It's an art experience where they spent over $1 million of art, which is in line with what we expect for our first phase. And additional phases beyond that, even above that. So exploring logistics on the art, but for the most part, it's about nuts and bolts engineering and constructability. So just a quick update, we have resubmitted our SDP and our PUD, so we're on our second submittal now for the first phase. The fun future phases that Joe just spoke about has not been submitted on a site plan, and that submittal will take additional studies, parking studies, traffic studies, etc., drainage studies, and those will come in future years and will require proper community engagement process that our first phase is done over the past several years. Next slide, please. The cost is quick overview. We've got some new faces in the room. What is this project? Got the first phase, which is what we submitted on, but what we've been working on for the past few years. And you have future phases. So the lake itself has a lot of components. There's not a lake, there's something else there. So, in that lake number, you're going to have benches, hardscape, just a general grading throughout the site, relocation of existing utilities, no matter what we do here. There are things that are there that need to be moved. So all in all, stuff that perfectly quantify, but we think it's well over perhaps up to $6 million on the lake and the lake area, which again is over 5 acres of land. When you come to hardscape Triangle Lake, so it's not a small area. Plaza and the art, we think that's somewhere near $4 million. But the parts of this slide was, I believe, to communicate that the public, support that we're receiving on this project is going to be far exceed with the significant private investment on this site. So in total, it's over $300 million. And with time, we hope that we would have support for future phases on the site plans. But it's not an insignificant private investment here. And again, we appreciate the partnership we've had with the City of Broomfield and Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority. And finally, structured parking, what you have out there are literally acres of asphalt parking. And it's not congruous with what a town center is supposed to look and feel like. So a lot of our proposal includes replacement of surface parking with structured parking. Hopefully that's perceived as a benefit, with covered parking offering protection from the elements. But again, it's shared use parking structures that flex over the course of the day, meaning commercial, residential, community benefiting needs, all share the space and flex over the course of the day. Next slide, please. Looking forward to next steps. We are in, the top row right now, completing studies, entitlement, land use applications. We think that continues through the remainder of this year, moving into next year, provided, we make it to the next step. It goes into the vertical construction documents once we receive approval on our land use application. Moving on to the heavy engineering architecture and vertical, and that includes, over 300 units of apartments, over 160 units of age restricted housing, as well as the repurposed Safeway building, which will total over 50,000 square feet, not including all the site infrastructure, lake engineering, etc. We are continuing to work on that. It's full bore, and that's again the focus of our efforts in this year. We still are targeting end of next year for closing of our capital, including bond finance, vertical construction finance, and commencement of construction. First works heavy engineering, grading, export, soil, site utilities, the deep utilities, the dry utilities. So you're going to see just a lot of heavier movers for those first few months, site mobilization, stormwater, etc. And then shortly thereafter, we'll commence vertical construction of our core buildings on the first phase, with the intent of delivering all of the buildings that surround the lake and the town plaza, the town square, at the same time, that we can turn the site over as a cohesive and complete Broomfield Town Square. You can see in the green at the bottom, future phases, and that's the material that Joe presented in concept plan this evening, which are not buildings that have been submitted in a formal site plan application. However, they are included in our PUD or zoning documents as potential future development. So we've taken a stab at laying out how those future buildings may lay out following the completion of the first phase. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, I believe, off the next slide.
Thanks, Tim and Joe. And both Lynn and I are part of the Matrix team, as you all know, and we've all been working with the development team for a number of months, actually years now, to get progress here. One of the things we did want to provide a quick update on, also, just as Tim had provided you an update on phase one. We also want to remind you of the agreement that was already in place, the development agreement that's already in place around the financing related to this project. And very briefly, as you can see, we have made some pre-development agreements, 2 of them at this point that council has approved, totaling close to $1 million of investment that is going into the project already, and has been doing some of the work that Tim has outlined as far as some of the studies and other things, where we're in a 50-50 relationship with the developer. As you can see in the second bullet, we do have that agreement that was approved in November 2019 and really identifies how we're coming in as a partner. So again, we're investing in this, as well as the private stuff, as Joe and Tim and Pat, the partnership is doing. We're providing 50% of our sales tax, our lodging tax, if a lodge goes in, service expansion fee, and the use tax. However, it is also capped at a $20 million investment. So while that revenue run may be higher, there is a maximum capital of $20 million. At the same time, as Tim pointed out, we'll be turning over the land. This is the land that covers the lake. As you can imagine, some of that other area, you saw 3 housing projects going in the first phase, as well as a Safeway building. We'll be turning that over, and it will be turned over at a value of 0, but then it goes on to the tax rolls at $20 to $21 million. We have invested, as you all know, or you may have been made aware previously, in purchasing the Safeway building as well as the lot itself, and that cost us roughly $3.6 million. So that's our investment also, and we'll be turning that over as part of the land seeding that will occur when they take possession of the property, beginning construction, roughly in late 2022. In addition, there is an existing URA that's in place. We'll be amending that to adjust it and creating a new URA, urban renewal area, if you recall, that will occur around Broomfield Town Square and will cover the entire area that is the Broomfield Town Square. So both phase and phase 2. And in that, we are currently in negotiation with several of our colleague tax districts for their commitment. And we have met in a preliminary manner with several of them to begin working through that. And that will be coming back through the council in early 2022, the urban renewal area formation, as well as those agreements for your approval, as well as within those individual taxing districts. So that gives you the quick summary of what our commitment is. It's roughly $40 to $41 million in total investment that'll be coming in. And as you noted from Tim's slide, you can see that between the vertical and the horizontal improvements, they will be they or their partners that may be doing the housing specifically will likely be investing in excess of $350 million. And so that gives you some sense of the relationship that's existing between the city and county of Broomfield and Broomfield Town Square Alliance. So on that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer for some closing comments. And then, of course, I and the rest of the team are ready for your questions. Thank you.
Closing comments, let's start questions.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation, Joe, Tim, and Thunder. I had to get that in there. So yeah, we'll start with our comments. We appreciate the presentation so far. We'll start with the land use review. Are there any members of our land use review commission who would like to comment on this proposal?
Thank you. Earl Franz, land use review committee. First of all, I just have to give a compliment with the design and layout and what they've done with this plan and going through focus groups and modifying it, improving it. Incredible. Several years ago, I saw a PowerPoint presentation, which was the initial concept. It just blew me away. And I thought, well, when this is complete, I'm going to sell my house, I'm going to sell my car, I'm going to buy a condo here, there's public transportation. This is where I want to live. That becomes a dream. It's in your mind. You just keep thinking about it. But if I'm correct, in 2024, there'll be 810 residential apartments in phase 1 and phase 2 together, and 12 for sale condos or townhouses, which is 1.5% of the units. And that doesn't include 10% for sale of affordable housing units. Again, I'm speaking for myself, but not my fellow geezers, but that's not enough for sale units. People would like to maybe take some equity, buy something that they could use again. And a couple examples they had in their portfolio was East Ridge Town Center in Stapleton, and the Old Town Fort Collins. Well, when looking at East Ridge Town Center in Stapleton, and I got online, from what I could see in Google Maps, just east of there, there's 100 condos for sale, 100 unit condo building. And it said in the last 5 years, the average 1-bedroom condo went from $250,000 to $350,000. Nice appreciation if you could afford to invest. Old Town Fort Collins, there's a approximately 150 unit condo building, again by Google Maps, that you can walk to downtown Fort Collins. 150 units of condos. I think this is going to be, as you all know, this is going to be the pride and joy of Broomfield. But I think we owe the citizens of Broomfield and future citizens of Broomfield some diversity of housing types. And I would hope that they would add some small modicum of condos and for sale units in this project. Thank you.
Thank you. We have any other members of the land use review? So we did.
Good evening, council members, and thank you all for the presentation this evening. I agree. I look at that area and think that it would be a wonderful place to live or to have for my son to come and join the community. We know we don't have enough affordable housing for our children to live in this community. And that's part of our goals here across what the Land Use Review Commission is doing. Having the ability to own property in a community that you've been building and that you believe in is important. So absolutely, it's important to be able to increase the number of for sale units in that area if possible. I also wanted to recognize the work that the developers and the folks on the project and the city have done in order to accommodate the wide variety of things that our community has asked for. And I've participated in some of that myself. We're not easy to please because we live in a really nice place. We have high standards of what we want from a community center. I lived in Fort Collins from 1975 to 2015, give or take. And downtown Fort Collins and Old Town, wonderful places to go, hang out and linger. I want to also ask the developers if they have considered the impacts of the COVID lifestyle, where more outdoor spaces are needed. I thought about that the last time we heard them present this, and I was kind of concerned with the way the narrowing of the kind of pathway of the retail might need to be readdressed if we have the need for more outdoor spaces for restaurants, for being able to hang out at a pub or something like that. So I just wanted to put that one out there because none of us want to have to live with the COVID lifestyle, but we need to be prepared that if it's going to be outside dining for a lot of people, that we should be prepared to handle that. Those are the top items I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the Land Use Review Commission? Seeing none, we will go to other advisory board comments. Are there any other boards or commission members who would like to comment on this proposal? Looks like we have at least one comment, and please state your name and the board member that you're on as well, the board that you're on.
Hi, my name is Tony Castle. I chair the Housing Advisory Committee for the City, County, of Broomfield. And I think I'd like to recruit these folks to join my committee. Agreed, equity in Broomfield, equity in what we're bringing to the table today is essential. And certainly, if you look in where you see so much rental, I think that just doesn't lend itself as deeply as ownership in a community, right? And I think that's imperative. This is something that we've talked about from our committee standpoint, time and time again, is that fabric, that if we have that diversity of housing stock in a project like this, and more importantly, in a situation where we, city and county, own the property, own the project, we can control it and drive it to the way that we want it to be, as opposed to, and I'm not saying the more traditional way, where we have developers come in and say, well, we've got this property and here's how we're going to try and fit into your expectations. Let's drive the expectations. Let's make sure that it fits everybody and give everybody an opportunity to really form that fabric, that basis that really makes a community a weave of diversity. It's more than anything else, right? The people from medium to low income all the way up. Let's not step away from the affordable component, the attainable component, the workforce component. So I don't want to go too far, but I really want to thank you for the opportunity to talk. And this looks like just an amazing project. And by the way, I apologize for my appearance. I dashed from a project into here. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Lois Vanderkooy from ACES. I wasn't coming to represent ACES, but I will. And I'm freshly retired and been married for 19 years. I just realized we were celebrating our wedding here. Anyway, I read through the memo that came out as well as looked at the ACES recommendations and suggestions for this project. And I have also been investigating net zero housing in Fort Collins, Arvada, and Pueblo. And I hope that the developers will realize that people want to go electric and start developing a more sustainable and healthy environment. So I don't know where that is with the developers, but if you can continue to talk with ACES committee, that would be good. And we have lots of people on that could, kind of give you some suggestions. Because I think, when you're a developer, I have this fear of developers that they get stuck in their old ways and think it's going to cost too much to change. But that's not necessarily true. So I hope council believes that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois, and happy anniversary to you and Neil. Do we have any other boards or committees that would like to comment on this proposal? Seeing none on that, we will now turn to public comments. So as mentioned earlier, the public may comment both in person or via phone. If you're going to join via phone and want to be placed in the queue for comments, again, please call 855-695-3744 and press *3. If you're going to be joining in person and you want to comment here tonight, just please line up behind the podium. Again, public comments are going to be limited to the time limits that we mentioned earlier, and I don't think we're going to exceed those. So we'll start with in-person public comment. If there's anyone here that would like to be heard, please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record. And public comments, again, will be limited to, I think, 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Roxy Jewel Lacmore. I've always said that the extended water area for 9 months out of the year has a possibility of being frozen, and we'll have to spend a lot of money to keep it from freezing or not having accidents and stuff inside that waterway. It's hard to get around from one side of that waterway to the other side in order to go from one business to the other business, by what they have shown on the pictures I've seen. And I just don't think it's sustainable, and it takes up a lot of acreage that can be put into for sale condos, which would be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxy.
Hi, my name is Neil Allaire. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Mayor and Council. And when I moved here 19 years ago today, I had lived up around Longmont for 20 some years. And it was hard all that time to figure out exactly where Broomfield is. So I love this idea of Broomfield Town Square that can be, we can identify with. That's our community center. So I think it's great. I wanted a place I could walk to for good coffee, which we walked here tonight. One thing that I'm disappointed in what I've seen in here is pretty minor nod to sustainability, honestly.
And especially in light of the IPCC report, many that we've had with the most recent one, we really have to get moving on dealing with climate change. I mean, it is serious. We see the fires, we see the air quality, we see the hurricanes intensifying, all of that. So I just really want to urge you and the team, and maybe particularly Tim, I guess, to really delve into this. Technologically, the technology exists to make this a clean, really carbon-free development. It's going to last for 50 to 100 years. That's 50 to 100 years of GHG producing infrastructure that we may build here. And to me, that's just untenable. It really is. I think it is, where are my notes? So on the other hand, I think this is a great opportunity for Broomfield and for the developers to be a leader like Broomfield has done in the past and just really dive into this, really look into what's possible in modern development, modern construction that can help us address and lead the state and really the country in a major development that is maybe on a timeline, but ends up being carbon free. Within, the state timeline, what do they call it, roadmap, is about till 2050 to reach all that. So I think it's a really wonderful opportunity. And I think Broomfield Town Square doing that, along with all the other design work, can truly make this something special. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Tim Clifford from the Broadlands. Really wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but first a little historical quick comment. I grew up on First and Emerald. My wife grew up on First and Coral. I found somebody earlier tonight that when I was about 10 years old, the parking lot where the Safeway is had a pond there and huge cottonwoods. And they had a big hay bale there. And the people who ran the farm lived over in the Pacific Ocean. And they kept telling us not to be, messing around in the hay and so forth. And we're just 10-year-old kids doing stuff. And finally, we knocked the hay all over the place. And they sent the 2 or 3 Broomfield cops that were in existence at the time chasing after us. And so I remember distinctly this day, running across the field, basically where this whole thing's going to be, and where post offices and so forth. So I will say I do like what I'm seeing so far. I will echo the comments that Tony and the other gentleman made as far as the equity and more equity so that our kids, our grandkids have a chance to maybe get started in the community. And so I'll just echo that. But again, from what I've seen, it's great to see what it is 50, 60 years ago from that day when I got chased by the cops.
Thank you, Tim. Do we have any other comments from members of the public in person tonight? Seeing none, we are going to go to the phones. And you have our Mayor Castriata, who's been monitoring our phones tonight.
Why, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We have 2 callers online who would like to comment.
Okay, let's start with caller number 1.
All right, Thomas Soder, you have 3 minutes.
Hey there, Thomas.
Hello?
Hey, Thomas, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Sorry.
Lion, we have 3 minutes to comment.
It's like listening to Lucy's teacher. So we moved here about a month after they opened Midway, going through eastward from Main Street. We live a block in from Midway, and the noise and the traffic on Midway are horrendous. At 5 o'clock, we've seen the traffic back up to the Catholic Church. going eastbound on Midway. That was supposed to be resolved with the flyover. Doesn't seem to have worked the magic that it was supposed to. Main Street is horrendous. The traffic backs up southbound on Main Street all the way up to the high school at 5 o'clock. 120th and Main goes without saying. It's horrible all the time. Now, we're not going to be able to turn Main Street into a 4-lane highway on the south side of 120th. It was already widened and improved, a decade ago, and it's pretty much maxed out. Why are we adding units to a very congested area already when we haven't solved the problem that we have now? We need to stop trying to add more housing in Broomfield. We have grown, I think I saw in the Denver Post a couple of weeks ago, 35% in 10 years, and we have not managed the growth. I'm also kind of perplexed by the idea of affordable housing mixed in with a lot of little restaurants. Restaurants and affordable housing don't necessarily go hand in hand. Restaurateurs are looking for upscale diners, not low-income ones. So that seems to be a contradiction as well. This whole project seems to not have been thought out as far as how we're going to handle it. Why are we worried about parking and electric cars when the traffic we have right now isn't supported by the current highway system? I would discourage putting this project in, especially housing. The restaurants and retail are great, but we don't need housing. And if we are going to put in housing, let's put in large condos that have fewer vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. We have another caller?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Susan Hans, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, thank you for taking my call this evening. My property is off 120th and Main, maybe 2-3 miles. I have been hearing rumors about this development several years ago and waited with bated breath. I'm anxiously looking to see what they're going to be doing with the Safeway, the parking lot, that whole area over there. Broomfield is growing. Broomfield is a wonderful community to be in. And as far as the housing is concerned, I saw 327 potential, I don't know if they're apartments or purchased condos or what they're going to be, but I think it's a great idea. Broomfield needs housing. Next to us is the Academy Place Apartments, which is all affordable housing. It's 50 units. It'll come online in December. And I think additional housing is needed. Now, with housing comes 1-bedrooms are required to have 1.5 parking spaces, 2 bedrooms, 2 parking spaces. And if there's a mix of 3 bedrooms here, they'll also need 2.5 parking spaces. So even if they were all 1-bedrooms, you're looking at almost 500 parking spots. And I noticed in one of the slides, parking was on the roof. May I suggest not parking on the roof, but finding better parking? Parking is going to be your thorn. But I think your rooftops should be reserved for garden beds, rooftop area where there's grass, trees, a place where people can go out and enjoy on nice days. Colorado has many, many, many sunny days, even in the wintertime. And the rooftop, not using that for a garden or places for people to find resolve in, I think is a missed opportunity. I am looking forward to this development. I welcome the development, and I believe there's room for it. But parking is going to be your thorn. That's my input tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
We have another caller, Mayor Pro Tem. They're being screened.
Okay, we'll take 2 seconds to let them be screened. And once again, if you're listening in and you want to call in and make a comment, the number is 855-695-3744. you need to press *3. And again, that's 855-695-3744, pressing *3.
All right, our caller is screened and ready. Laura Paulson, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Hi, thank you all for listening to our comments. I'm calling from Broomfield Heights, and I've talked a lot with our neighbors in the area. We're very close to the edge of the neighborhood and where this is all going to be happening. And there's a lot of concern about the traffic that's going to be brought in to the neighborhood because of this project. It seems like there's this phase 2 has kind of just added more residents, more apartments. So we're definitely concerned about that as it is. I don't think we can go like a month without somebody hitting that Broomfield Heights sign on First and on Main. So I think just some more reassurances that the traffic isn't going to be an issue and that we're not going to be having our residential streets having overflow parking on our streets. And also just want to thank everyone who's brought up comments about sustainability, because I think that's a really great opportunity for Broomfield to be a leader, as Neil had said, and really make this a special project. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura.
And we have another caller being screened. Since you gave the number out, just kidding.
No, we definitely welcome the comments from the public. So once again, it's 855-695-3744. And that is *3 if you're looking to comment on this tonight, if you're listening in. You're still being screened?
Yes.
Okay. Devin, can you sing us a song?
Okay, we've got it. Sorry. All right, John Hubbard, you're on and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Hello everyone. Thanks for taking comments tonight. I just want to say I'm very excited about the project. There's a lot of things here that we should be excited about: local restaurants, local businesses, walkable areas. I'm liking everything I'm hearing about connecting with neighborhoods, connecting trails, making it pedestrian friendly where you can take a stroll around the lake. I just want to say as a blanket statement, please do not make this a car-oriented development. There's plenty of places if people want lots and lots of convenient parking and acres of surface level asphalt. They can find that in Broomfield. So we've already heard tonight, most of the people against this or complaining about it or talking about parking or talking about the associated vehicle traffic. My encouragement is please do everything possible to make it pedestrian oriented, bike oriented, public transit oriented, and not cater to vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other callers on the phone? No. Okay, looks like we are done with our public comments. So this is a chance now for the applicants, Joe and Tim. Do you have any final comments on the questions or concerns that you've heard so far?
Thank you, really good comments. It's hard to present everything. You hope to incorporate a $300 million project in just a few minutes. So just to address a couple recurring themes we've heard. One is for rent versus for sale residences. We do not have an ultimate decision on what the breakup is. I think some of the information that has not been seen today, but is available in council packet, is a site plan for the anticipated future phases, and our consultants at Civitas has done a great job laying that out. Specifically, I'd like to address the area at the corner of, I guess it's Community Park Road, future orientation of Community Park Road, and First Avenue, just west of the fire district building. That area was intended to include for sale housing. Just to speak to some of the comments about for sale versus for rent, we do think there's an opportunity. We also have horrible laws in the state when it comes to for sale housing. And you'll note that you don't see a lot of that being built, and there's a reason for that. It's not because developers don't think that there's demand for it, but developers' net worth, their livelihood is put on the line every single time they develop an attached for sale home. So please, anybody who feels that we need more attached housing and entry-level housing in the state, please support any initiative you hear that's going to go towards, amending what's been a plaguing issue in the state for years and years and years. So just to speak a little bit about the for sale housing, it's nothing certain on what's for rent versus for sale. So again, these are future phases that are out there several years, but we do anticipate there will be additional for sale housing. Miller White does have a home building brand, Elevate Homes for sale. ElavateHomesForSale.com. We're building 57 for sale homes in Silverthorne, Colorado right now, which is another public-private partnership with the town of Silverthorne. So we think we can accomplish it. We're doing it. It's nerve-wracking, and again, nothing defined yet. So we do think there's a place for it here, and we'll continue to push for that, especially given all the great comments today. Sustainability, Motorway also is a company focused on sustainability, including modular construction. So we have a prefabrication facility in Golden, Colorado, where we prefabricate walls and flooring panels now. So, for instance, our last project we constructed in Aurora, Colorado, another public-private project was entirely prefabricated framing, 5-story building, 216 units erected in 3.5 months. That saved something like 2 million nail shots from the local community. The dumpsters at the prefabrication plant are emptied about every 2 weeks. So the waste is very, very minimal. On top of that, Miller White is currently submitted on the Epic Challenge in California. Miller White is an organization that has offices in both Colorado and Southern California. And the Epic Challenge is basically an initiative contest that's put out by the State Energy Commission in the state of California. Our partner is the National Renewable Energy Lab on that project. We are pioneering state-of-the-art technology when it comes to sustainability. And we do intend to use that project as a prototype that will be employed on the attached residences of this project. So it includes prefabricated mechanical pods, energy recovery, heat pumps off of your wastewater, probably solar, again, prefabrication, a couple of technologies together, and I can guarantee we're going to exceed status quo. So that's just to speak to sustainability a little bit. Very early in the process, these buildings have not been designed yet. We haven't even begun the vertical engineering on these buildings, but rest assured that that is something that we're going to be hitting pretty hard here as we move forward. Do I think you had a couple other comments?
Thank you. Looks like we're going to then be moving forward with our.
Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem. We had a couple of new residents get screened while the applicant was addressing the questions. Would it be okay?
Yes, I think we have some time, so we will go back and we'll take a couple extra comments from our phone lines.
Thank you. First up is Elise Kelly. Elise, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for taking my comment. I live in Second Filing, and I am super excited about this project. I grew up in Broomfield Heights. I'm raising my family in Broomfield Heights, and I actually met my husband at the Starbucks in the Safeway. So I'm very excited about this project. Just a few things I would like to echo. Maybe keeping a more sustainable focus as far as driving is concerned, especially with the new climate report. How are we going to make this easily accessible to people who live further north, up near like the new Children's Hospital and things like that? Do we have a plan for public transportation or something like that that might make this more easily accessible to them? My second comment is I'm wondering how we are hopefully planning to attract small businesses and maybe not quite so many chains to the new area. And then my final comment is, as my husband and I have been fixing up our house, we have certainly seen a hike in pricing with regard to building materials, and labor shortages and things like that. And I'm just wondering if that's something that's been taken into account in the budget, or are we getting some sort of special non-pandemic deal on this? Yeah, just sort of some cost concerns there. So thank you again for hearing my comments, and I really appreciate it. Looking forward to this project.
Thank you, Elise.
And next, Tammy Van Jacobs, you're on and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, this is Mark Van Jacobs. I live at 145 Main Street, directly across from this project. I've been living here for 22 years. We've been in Broomfield a little over 30. My biggest comment, I guess, or question is how the traffic's going to be affected on Main Street. I mean, we talk about traffic all the time. We saw a couple of traffic studies go down last year during COVID. But the traffic is actually a lot crazier than you think coming down the hill, because people come off 120th. They try to make it through the First Avenue light there, and looks like on the map there's a couple of turnouts coming out of the area right onto Main Street. That, I think, is a little crazy. 2, what about parking for the residents of First Filing? I've been here 22 years. Some of my neighbors up and down the street have been here longer than I have, and they have children that are coming out of high school and college. Are we going to have permits for parking on Main Street for the residents that live here, or are we just going to be left behind? Those are really the main concerns. Traffic is a very important issue because I live here, and I have for many years, and I see what it's like every day trying to get out of my driveway or getting into my driveway, coming to or from work or wherever we're going, and how the council plans to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any more comments online?
No, ma'am, for Jim.
Okay, Tim or Joe, would you like to respond to this, a couple comments?
Yeah, I apologize, I didn't hit on traffic and parking earlier. There's been a few comments on that. Again, coming back to engineering, the studies that we've been working on over the past several months, those include traffic studies and parking studies. We let the studies essentially speak for themselves and their conclusions, and those conclusions include what is the level of service, if you will, as the engineers define it, of both Main Street, all the intersections, so Spader and First and Main Street and the intersection by Good Times and et cetera. So the engineering studies have been completed on those scopes, and those studies have been incorporated into our design to ensure appropriate level of service on all of the roads and intersections. Additionally, the parking, same for the parking, parking consultant that completed our study has unbelievable amount of experience analyzing, what is appropriate ratios for shared use parking structures. There's different needs at different times of day, at different times of day. And again, if there's any additional inquiries on those matters, I believe all of those studies have been posted to the portal and are publicly available. They will be posted to the portal and they're publicly available if anybody's got any additional questions or concerns on those matters.
Thank you. So I think we'll be turning now to council questions and comments. And I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of those. Remind my colleagues that phase 1 that we've already seen is currently in progress. And it sounds like that the STP and the PUD have been submitted for that already. And I was expecting that we'll be seeing that sometime in the near or not so near future. So try to limit your comments tonight on phase 2, which was presented, or anything new that may have been popped up in since May of 2020. So with those guidelines, who wants to go first? We'll start with Councilmember Tessier.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for your presentation. It's been a long time coming. I think it has been more than 27 years. Wow. 9. I didn't hear you, either of you address affordable housing outside of the, sticking to the inclusionary zoning. And I'm curious, and this might be for staff and maybe for someone on the Housing Advisory Committee, I'm looking at the possibility of using ARPA funds and using maybe some money in the housing fund to partner to create more affordable housing at the 30 to 50% AMI. What I don't want to see is a community that's exclusive and for only the wealthy. And the reason why we want affordable housing here is so they're spending less on their rent so they can actually enjoy the dining that's there. So there's some things, I mean, I will not support this if it does not include affordable housing. We have 250 units for seniors. Seniors are becoming the highest displaced population across the nation and in Broomfield. I see it every day working where I work as a housing manager at the local family resource center. In this phase, how many residential units will come before the retail? Well, first, before I go into that, I'm wondering if someone could address my question about using different funds and getting creative with the money to support affordable housing.
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor, council members, Jeff Rowan again, Economic Vitality. So the council member's question really addresses how we might go forward with the project as we go into that development. And it's noted by both Joe and Tim in their presentation, they won't necessarily be providing the housing themselves. It'll be a secondary partner, somebody that they will be contracting with. So there will be an opportunity for us as a city to engage with them around that housing. So first off is the first layer is within the existing agreement. They'll be providing either 20% of the units as part of their agreement with whoever they bring in, or they'd be doing a cash in lieu. We can then engage with that developer of the housing and figure out if we want to provide additional support through, as you point out, a couple of different funding sources to drive down some of the housing prices. So that would be the way that it would work, is work through that second tier development approach.
Thank you.
You bet.
This is something. I will never look at you the same way. I love it. Okay, so how many residential units will come before the retail? That's my next question.
The residential should come online simultaneously with retail. The retail, some of the retail actually open first with the repurposed Safeway building because it is isolated south of First Avenue. It will be safe to open that facility prior to completing stuff north of First Avenue.
Cool. And there was a comment about using rooftops as more of like either gardens and whatnot, and I'm wondering even like the possibility of solar too. So have you thought about that or?
Yep. So I believe the image that was being referenced is the picture of a parking structure that was wrapped with residences. So you're seeing the top story of a parking structure. That rooftop amenities are great. The building right next to the one in reference has a single-story parking structure on a concrete, and it's got a concrete put on top of that. It is anticipated to have rooftop amenities on that part on the top of that parking structure. Green space, probably spa, standard sort of outdoor amenities, turf area, perhaps garden. And then we're adjacent to dozens of acres of big green fields. So, the cost of building park on top of the building is exorbitant and it's very difficult to accomplish. And we want to get folks out of their residence and enjoying the beautiful park we're creating.
Yeah.
And then solar, sorry, I didn't address your solar question. That's a great idea. We have been looking at that. Does cost additional expense to produce the wrapping for the solar. You have big steel restrictions, but particularly on the active adult building. Covered parking on the rooftop is very smart, and those are the biggest open, unobstructed surface areas on the site that aren't open space. So it's probably the most likely place for the solar on site.
Cool, and I'm wondering if ACES could, look at some grants or whatever to help facilitate, it's like, it's gonna take many villages to create, what we're looking for here. And the sign, the Heart of Broomfield sign, the first day I got on council, I was like, I fell madly in love with that sign. Some of my friends who grew up here were like, bring the sign back, Sharon. And I'm like, I'm gonna bring the sign back. And there are a lot of people in the community who want to see that sign back. So I am jazzed to the gill to see that that sign being resurrected, and looking forward to that. I've got one more. Oh, so with the, so you made a comment about the prefab homes, and I'm wondering, do those, are they more affordable? So I'm thinking then that would save money here and there. If we need to go smaller on the water, can we do that in order to address the housing, issue? So those are some of the things that I'm thinking of, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
The prefabrication, unfortunately, everybody's trying to figure it out and try to, as a cost-effective solution to save money on construction. Nobody's been able to figure it out yet. The latest is Katerra, and they produce massive, Tesla scale facilities, and they just went through Chapter 11 reorganization. It's been difficult. People have been trying to crack the nut forever. Essentially, your savings are going to be on schedule, noise pollution during construction, and waste. There's some types of modular construction where you save on energy as well. You have full three-dimensional modular. But unfortunately, the cost savings aren't there yet.
Cool. Well, I look forward to hearing what my other council member colleagues have to say, and might come back for round two. Thank you.
That was good. Thank you, Councilmember Tessie. Mayor Castriota.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And in just the 4 years that I've been following this project, it's morphing and changing. So I definitely feel like it's been in the pipeline for so long that the list of must-haves keeps changing, just like Broomfield keeps changing and growing and evolving, and our priorities change. So I've watched a lot happen in the last few years that I've been following it, and it's working really hard to fill a lot of needs and wants of our community and the people who live here. My want was, having more restaurant choice. For two reasons. So we can keep that revenue here, the entertainment revenue that we all spend in Boulder and Adams, because they have a wider variety of dining choices. And we hear that in our community surveys that people, we're not exactly the culinary mecca. Maybe we could be, but part of what I'm also worried about is one of our commissioners brought up the uncertainty. And when this project was first visualized, we didn't have a once in 100-year pandemic. And so many things are changing in terms of what businesses are going to look like, what retail is going to look like, where are people going to be spending their money. So I just proceed with cautionary thinking now, because as what we're talking about refinancing, redeveloping Flatirons, we're going to have some difficult conversations about First Bank Center. And these investments are going to add to the debt. So my questions are, we need to be mindful of our existing debt. And even though this is capped at 20 million, what if there needs to be more money? Where's that money going to come from? When you consider the sizable public contributions for this project, we need to be careful to ensure that this property that we own is utilized to the best of its ability without taking too many risks. So I just want to put that out there, and it is, you know, a prime piece of real estate. So we need to be very intentional and thoughtful about what's going to last there, what's going to stand the test of time, because not everything does, as we're finding out with Flatirons and the First Bake Center. I mean, there's so much to love about it, but we just need to consider all those factors. So I appreciate all the thoughtful comments on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Lynn.
Yes, I appreciated all of the resident comments on the sustainability elements of the project. There was an ACES document that was sent to planning in April. And I think it was discussed with the developer. I didn't see those reflected in the memo. So I was wondering exactly where that went to. I was at least encouraged by the developer's comments that they are doing projects in California. He referred to the EPIC Challenge, where NROL is partnering, doing prefab, using solar and heat pumps. That sounds great. I mean, that is the direction that certainly the conversation in ACES is looking at. And I mean, this is, as the one resident said, a development that's going to be the center of the city with us for up to 50 years. And we want to build it to meet our future GHG goals. So I am interested to know if we can get those commitments from the developer moving forward. It would be ironic if they're partnering with NROL in California, but they can't partner with NROL here when we're much closer to NROL. So, you know, that's what I certainly would like to see. The green roofs or the rooftop gardens would be great. I understand the prefab is conducive to reducing construction waste, so that's good. But the building electrification is important. Can we, what is the builder willing to do in that direction with heat pumps, electric appliances, so we can meet our GHG goals? The one caller mentioned the how will people in the north get to this development? And that's been a concern of mine. I think we have previously talked about the possibility of a shuttle or something to, if we want to draw people to linger, and we want to address the concerns of the residents surrounding the development with traffic concerns, then it does seem worthwhile to look into the possibility of at least a shuttles running part of the time. And the lake, I saw that there is now a lake ecology study that exists. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. What I recall from the last discussion is that there were some engineering concerns with the lake and exactly how that would proceed. So I am interested in seeing that. If the developer would like to give any preview of that, because that was on my radar was, oh, is this lake going to be possible going forward, feasible and affordable? Maybe it doesn't bother anyone else. I do not like the striping on the concrete from I read, this is my aesthetic perspective. I read the memo that it's supposed to mimic the broomcorn colors. I like that. I love all of the artwork in the memo that's going to mimic the broomcorn.
With Broomfield, I didn't care for the rather loud striping on the side, on the concrete. That's just me. Maybe other council members liked it. It doesn't seem like a calm place to linger to me with that old striping on the sidewalk. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lynn. We'll go next to Councilmember Groom.
Thank you. I'll continue on with some of the comments that I have regarding the water feature. And I do like the water feature. I do agree that it is an attraction. I know from previous conversations, one of the concerns of council was the expense. So now we've got the $6 million construction. But my concern is what is the maintenance for the lake? And is that a city of Broomfield maintenance and annual maintenance? And are we also going to be staffing the dock? Who staffs the dock, and who does the rental of the water boats, or what are we doing at the dock? Thank you.
Would you like me to-
Yes, please, that would be perfect.
Thanks. Joe Bostries again. We'll of course we'll be staffing the dock. That'll be private developers' responsibility to take care of that. Hopefully rent some little paddle boats and stand-up paddle boards and that kind of thing on the dock there. So that'd be our responsibility. The maintenance on the lake is not terrible. It's mostly keeping it full of water and doing some annual testing, to make sure that the water quality is what we want it to be. We want it to be a very high quality body of water, since people will be dangling their toes in it and splashing around in it. So it needs to be high quality. It's not horrific. The most expenses is keeping it full of water, but it's important on this, and we'll touch on this more probably later in the reports that you see, but whatever the alternative is for there is also very expensive. So if you imagine, what if that space was a park, for example, you'd have parks, bluegrass takes as much water or more than a lake would. You've got fertilizing, mowing, flowers, taking care of, you'd have playgrounds, whatever you put in there, all very, very expensive and labor intensive to maintain. Let the lake being less so. All you sort of have to take the, things that cost a little bit more, things that cost a little bit less, and see where you come out on a balance. The lake is not more expensive than many of the other alternatives that you can imagine.
So is that the city of Broomfield's expense, the maintenance of the lake?
It is. Some of the infrastructure that we require will be part of the project cost.
Sure.
But the ongoing, just like a park or anything else, that the city would be taking care of. But in the overall financing of the project, most of what we need to take care of will be built with that. So the ongoing is really just adding water and some other maintenance. But like I said, compared to say a park, it's probably actually less.
Sure. But I do think that there's probably a little more to it. I mean, every once in a while, I'm assuming you drain, you dredge. I don't know, there's got to be some.
Hopefully we never have to do that.
Okay.
If we build it right, it should be a very sustainable piece.
Then for $6 million, try to make it right.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but that $6 million also includes a lot of what's going on around the lake.
Sure.
In terms of hard costs, and we're all talking about roughly 2 acres. 4.7 in the lake. Yeah. 4.7, it's a huge space, right? So you start figuring out on a square foot basis, it's not that bad.
So then going on with the question of maintenance, the parking structure, they're very, very expensive to build, and they're also expensive to maintain. And we have another one here in Broomfield where we have
who's responsible for what maintenance discussion quite frequently. So who is responsible for the maintenance of the parking garage?
Right.
Okay, all right. So, and that's for its entirety? For its life?
Yes, they're all basically, these are ultimately become a private responsibility.
Perfect. And then I do have some more questions for you, if you just stay there.
Okay.
One of my major concerns when I first learned about this program or this project 4 years ago, when I looked at it, because I too, I lived here when that sign was still up, and I'm not born here, but raised here from a very early age. And my concern was that this facility would overprice our residents, and let's just say the cost of a beer. It were cost of a plate for food. Is how we're building it and everything we're putting into it still going to allow a small business owner to charge $5 for beer? We're looking at $20 for beer. And that's my main concern. I see a lot of really fancy things going into this. And the residents that I know in Broomfield would love something like this, but when push comes to shove, they still are interested in that $5 to $7 beer.
Sure. No, I love this question because this partnership that we've created between the city and us actually allows that to happen. Because of the TIP financing, because of the city contributing the land, what we're actually setting up here is an opportunity for this thing not only to be economically sustainable for a very, very long period of time, but a key part of this was that we want to tenant it with all local tenants. And one of the criteria that we laid out at the beginning of this is that, look, if we want local tenants, we cannot charge them $40 a square foot. The only people that can do that are the chains, right? So what we have to do is to come up with a financial structure that allows the tenants very affordable rent. This is key to the project, is that the rents are going to be low as we can possibly make them. And on top of that, we're giving them waterfront real estate, okay, with huge patios, which you don't have to pay rent on. The amount of patio space in this project is immense compared to most projects. So the result is they're going to have local tenants that have affordable rent, which means they can afford to pay low, they can afford to charge lower prices. They really make it work and accessible to everybody in the community. One of the big things that will be in this project, for example, is a beer garden. We have a couple of beer gardens now, including the big one in Lowry. We consistently price ourselves, way below the full service restaurant competition for all the reasons that you're describing, because these are convivial community gathering places. It's not a place to go drop $9 on a beer. But the whole structure of this project, and what's so cool about it, frankly, is that the economic structure of the project allows us to be super competitive in a variety of different ways. But it would be hard to make this project work without the partnership we have with the city. And certainly we would end up in exactly what you're talking about, is that all the space would have to go to the highest bidder.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And I know I'm probably getting close to out of time, and I just want to say, I made this comment before, and it still hasn't been changed in the plans. There are 4 tennis courts up there, and there's 3 still in the drawings. So I do think that we need to keep the number of tennis courts the same. We've got a big tennis court following in Broomfield, and I wouldn't want to see us reduce the number of tennis courts that we have.
They're still full.
They're still full.
Oh, in the drawing there, it shows 3.
There may be a graph from.
Okay.
The actual footprint is not changed.
All right, so.
Do you
want to say that? Do you want to say that on record? Since he's in there.
We will make sure there are 4 tennis courts. The footprint will be the same.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Greenland. Next we have Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to take off my mask so you all can understand me, assuming you can ever understand me, right? But I want to look at the big picture here before I get to my one very little nitpicky little picture comment. So, and perhaps Manager Hoffman can speak to this. What is set in stone already in this, and what are the questions we're addressing tonight? Because we've addressed this many times.
So the unusual piece is the concept review includes phase 2. So phase 1 is what you all have already looked at. What we have agreed to from a community perspective is the slide. Jakey, can you put that slide back up, please? From the presentation, I think it's second to the last. Between the land dedication, we're capping at 20%. So when you look at bullet number 2, Councilmember Law Evans.
Yes.
So we've spent the 400 with the civil engineering. 50% if we move forward with the lodging tax. And what Joe just referred to with the tax increment financing. So that is an urban renewal area. And that urban renewal area will be coming back to council to reestablish the boundaries. And within any urban renewal area, when you talk about tax increment financing, so if you think about the base of where it is right now, and the amount of property tax, excuse me, that it generates. And then when you put an urban renewal area around it, you consider that tax increment financing, because anything then, once you lock in that base and then you add to it, there's an increment of tax that is then collected. That entire increment of tax then goes to that urban renewal area and then is, by agreement, disseminated out to whether it's any type of development. So in this case, that tax increment finance amount, yet to be determined, would also be part of the project. The 50% would be capped, and this is what we've already agreed to. We've agreed to the TIF, but not the amount, because you all have not approved the new urban renewal area yet. Excuse me. So part of the conversation moving forward, it would be, will that $20 million cap, as we move forward, if we have additional accoutrements or solar or sustainable or whatever that case may be, whatever those added values for our community is, do we look at raising the cap of the 20 million? Or we'll already be looking at the life of the URA, which is usually 25 years for that tax increment financing. And then the additional layers of financing could be a metro district. It could be a PIF. There's been a lot of conversations about public transit from a shuttle perspective. Very similar to no, let's don't use that for an example.
Good. Okay.
Now or in the future.
Okay.
But the shuttle that private entities support down in the south.
Okay.
So it's almost like that last mile. So people park in and then they shuttle it around to those other businesses. A lot of times you can, it's kind of it's an additional tax that's laid on that would support something along those lines. Again, this is a very complex financial deal that we're about ready to walk into. From the past conversations that we've had with council, the master development agreement that we had with Baseline, vastly different, right, than what we're doing with Flatirons, which is a redevelopment. This kind of takes into account every single financing opportunity or option that we have in our toolbox, if you will, whether we've utilized it or not, you can, in order to make this deal work.
So, okay, thank you very much. So if I can summarize your summary,
yeah.
What we're really talking about tonight is sort of getting our first look at what phase 2 would look like, but then really talking about the financing for additional things that we've talked about or that we're we are talking about, on top of the agreements we've already made, the agreements that are already in place and moving forward. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this is a little bit less about, for example, sometimes in concept reviews, we go out and we pick we say, oh, I don't like the colors you have on that building. This is a little bit less about that and a little bit more about determining what it is that the community, what we think the community wants, and then determining how to pay for it, or something like that.
Yes, so we have the big structures, right? So we know that the fact that it's in an urban renewal area is really what's giving us an opportunity to do this.
Right.
We would not be able to do this, private-public partnership, but for the additional added opportunity to have tax increment financing and all of those other items.
Fair enough. Okay, so question for Mr. Romine. We have talked in past sessions about the distinction in Broomfield between an economic engine and, I don't know a better term. I'm thinking here of the First State Center as the opposite of an economic engine. I don't want to say what I really think of it in the back of my head because this is a family-oriented meeting, right? But in terms of an economic, it's a drain. Maybe I'll just say it that way. It's an economic drain. So in the scale of the economic engine that is and has been Flatirons Mall to the economic drain that is and has been the First Bank Center, where do you anticipate or project that this development will fall for Broomfield?
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor, council members, specifically your question, and I just want to take one step back. So we do have a financial agreement in place that includes our proportion of the taxes that will be going in. That's at 50% that we talked about. And to that point, we have a maximum level of right now $20 million. So that is the agreement that is in place right now.
Understood.
The only part of the agreement that is not in place is what portion any of the other taxing districts may be putting into a TIF. So our funds are committed and set up. So they won't change unless, as City Manager Hoffman pointed out, we decide we want to ask for more, which would potentially reopen those conversations. But that's where we are right now on the financing side.
Understood.
Secondly, then, to go specifically to your question, and that is where is this from? Because of the $20 million cap, we're at what I would call a revenue neutral to revenue positive. This is not going to be like Flatirons has been for the city and county of Broomfield, something generating millions of dollars toward the general fund. But I also believe that based upon the financing and the analysis we've done to this point, that it is not going to be a financial drag or drain, as you were using the term, since it is still family hour.
Thank you.
So it really is something that we see is going to be contributing to the community, but financially, potentially, but more importantly, and this is really the key of this particular project, we talked about the three projects coming together, baseline, Flatirons, redevelopment, and this one. This one is creating that community spot. So the value of it, I would argue from an economic vitality standpoint, is it's creating community. It's giving us that center in place. It will not be a huge fiscal engine, but I think it will be a positive fiscal engine. Because as we did the analysis, the run of revenue is expected to well exceed the $20 million cap.
Agreed. Understood. Okay. And I appreciate that very much. And I agree that it is a community gathering place and we want it on that basis. What I'm kind of aiming for though is the add-ons. If we say we want it to be, for example, completely carbon neutral or carbon free, something like that, that does come at an economic price tag. And if we do that, if council decides that that's a direction council would like to move, I would respectfully suggest that kind of big ticket priority item needs to go back into the master priority list for the entire city and see where it rises. That might have to be done fairly quickly given the timeline here, but we know that we are entering a time when we have to be very careful with our finances for the next couple of years minimum. So that's kind of what I was driving at. Thank you, Mr. Merwin. I do want to call out that the developer has discussed that we do want this to be financially sustainable. And I absolutely want to remember that this is not a risk-free proposition for the developer or for the city. And anything, I'm not suggesting that the comments that have been made tonight are, but if council chooses to put additional features or restrictions or whatever on this, that does have the potential of increasing the risk. Well, yeah, I suppose it has the potential of decreasing the risk as well, but this is not a slam dunk. I think, in my opinion, after 25 years in commercial real estate, cities make lousy developers, really lousy. And if you want the two latest that I can think of, our neighbor to the south, how long has the city of Westminster been working on the redevelopment of Westminster Mall? And how many contractors and plans have they gone through? No offense to Westminster, I think this is true for every city. Similarly, if you've been out to the Denver airport lately, the Great Hall, what a mess. And that's been a mess forever. Now, I don't mean physically, I mean from a planning stage. So this is not risk-free, and I want to emphasize that. Couple more questions, Mayor Pro Tem, real quick. In one sentence or less, since I have little time, when this property is completely developed, who will be the fee simple owner of the majority of the development? I realize that townhouses are going to get sold, but the city of Broomfield will not get the developer, right? Thank you. And I think that we need to remember that. Once we turn the keys over to them, they have the keys if they're baby. So talk to me, somebody, I don't care who it is, maybe probably staff, yes, staff, about water, the source of the water in this lake. How much is it going to cost? And exactly, so those of us who walk our dogs a lot around that lake have seen the geese coming back already. And with all due respect, I think if you want people to dip their toes in this lake, you're going to have to do something about geese, or otherwise keep it very clean. So what's the source of water? How much is the water going to cost? And how are we going to keep it clean?
I'm going to ask Tim to come up and talk a little bit about where the initial water will come from. And then what the cleaning and the filtration. So it's not like a constant filling. It needs to be filled once. And then Tim's going to walk us through the engineering piece of cleaning it, because people will be in the water.
There's the drilling stuff. So the source of the water, as it stands right now, the source of water is intended to be a ditch that's about a mile from the site. There's irrigation canals that are existing from that ditch to our site.
Yep.
So using those ditches, there's a head gate at the main ditch, regular ditch. We will then need to pump up from Main Street. We'll have to pump it up in elevation to get the right elevation. But that's an anticipated source for both filling and potentially the topping off as well. So the topping off is not as much water annually as it takes to fill it. It's I don't know, I think it was around 12 or something acre feet per year. The cost of that was about $15,000 per year to keep the lake topped off. The initial lake filling was somewhere around $300,000 is what we calculated on the cost of the water. And that would be
$300,000, not acre feet.
Correct.
Okay.
$300,000, and that would be borne by the project. So that'd be a final expense. Paid for with the same bond revenues that we'd be using for the rest of the financial mechanisms for the public benefiting uses.
So, and how are we going to keep it clean again?
So geese, bunch of different tactics to be employed. That ecology study is pretty interesting to read. We have a minute. One, hard surfaces surrounding the lake. As it turns the lake, they have to be of a certain height. You know, if you have a 3-inch hard surface vertical lift, the geese can just hop in and out. If it's 6 inches, it's more of a deterrent. So it's going to be somewhere high enough, we believe, to be a deterrent. And we call them forward walk surrounding a portion of the lake, which is the public facing plaza side. So we have hard surfaces with big terrace benches that drop down into the lake. So if you've ever been down to Riverfront Park or Confluence Park by REI, if you can picture that sort of terrace concrete wall, except, you know, it's only talking about a couple of feet here. But they're climbable, of course, for children. And then on the other side of the lake, tall grasses are a deterrent. So if you you plant with like, natural tall grass, catch or something of that nature, you got a natural deterrent from ease. You're basically just trying to inhibit the ease of their use of the lake. And ultimately, you're never going to be able to completely keep them up. So there's some more manual deterrents, including running of dogs. So there are professionals.
My dog would like to volunteer.
Thank you. And there are professionals out there that do this, for instance, on golf courses. So if you run them, say, 2 times a week, you knock the geese off their schedule, and they're not wanting to hang around. And that's been really the most effective from what I hear. But it's a multitude of tactics. There's coyote decoys. There's things you can do on that front as well.
So a lot of that has been done down on the pond already. And I don't know if you've walked around there lately, but it doesn't work. Whatever's going, like at the amphitheater, the concrete lip there. Yeah. Again, this is family hour, but there's goose dudes all over. Yeah. And it's 1.5 foot from the water.
Yeah, much more robust than what you're seeing down.
Okay. So I'm holding you to this, okay?
Otherwise, I'm on cleanup duty.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yes, you're on duty. Yeah.
So Councilmember Lyon, you are an extra time here, so give him a quick brief.
Okay, so thank you. I didn't mean to get sidetracked. That was my issue is the geese. I guess I just want to be very mindful of the add-ons that we come up with, and that this is not risk-free. And in order to keep it as low risk as possible and make it as successful as possible, let's keep our add-ons to a minimum, because the worst possible outcome here is for the developer to get halfway through and then something catastrophic happens, and all of a sudden we've got a half-finished project down there. It's not ours anymore. It's not fee simple ours. So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate the leeway.
Thank you, Member. Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Councilmember Lindsted.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. First of all, I just want to thank our development partners and our staff for all the incredible work on this project. This has been something that the community's wanted for forever, as my entire life. You hear it from the residents calling in, and from everyone. So I'm very excited to see this moving forward. I think the plan, as complex as it is robust, and it's finally going to give us that community place and that placemaking and that kind of heart of the town that everyone wants. Something to be mindful of as we look at this development. This is going to be the heart of our community, and it's going to set the tone for the future of our community in a lot of ways. And I just want us to think about that as we're looking at add-ons and what we want in these future proposals, and as things move forward. Because yes, having very sustainable construction is something I absolutely would love to see. And I think this being the hallmark of the community, it's a really appropriate place to look at, have a future-looking lens when it comes to development. The other add-on I was one thing I really did agree with, and it was my big comment coming into the study session tonight, was exactly what Commissioner Braun said about that owner-occupied housing and that need for that diverse mix of housing. I'm going to be real disappointed if we have 90% rental units, and I really do want to see a diverse mix of housing, and whatever we have to do to make that happen, I want us to do. Someone called in and mentioned rooftops, and you have owner-occupied condos. I think private rooftops. There's a lot of things you can do to make things more desirable, and I don't know. I would just love to see that diversity in that housing. I guess my next question was more about that connectivity and the wayfinding. When I was seeing this project, the whole time I was thinking this would be a great place for electric scooters, electric bike rentals, something to get that maybe not multimodal, of course, but that connectivity to the neighborhoods to the north in First and Second Filing, and further north in Broomfield, and even to the south, where we have less distance dividing parts of the community, but there's major roadways and it's more difficult to cross. So I guess my big comment would be, I would love to see maybe our wayfinding plan, I don't know, how we get more parts of the town connected to this development, because everybody should have access to this development. And, we have a lot of density down on the US 36 corridor, and it's not that far, you have an electric bike. So I would love to think more about how to include that. But overall, I'm just really, really excited. And, it is, of course, a risk to do this, but it's a risk the community's been asking, the councils of past and present to take for 30 years. So I'm ready to do it. And I'm just really grateful for our partnership and for the work that all of our staff and you all are doing. So I look forward to seeing those pieces come forward. And I don't know if staff has any response to any of those comments, but that's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
We have a great lead on electric scooters and bikes.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindsted. So I do know we are just past the 8 o'clock hour, which is their traditional break time. So I'm guessing we have at least a half hour of comments left. Does anyone want to take a quick 10-minute break? Yes, okay, we'll take a quick break and we will reconvene at approximately 8.
The Access Live event is in music hold. Music hold ended.
Okay, thank you. We are back for our study session. We were on council comments still. And next up for council comments, I believe, was Councilmember Chef.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jazerski. And thank you to the developers, the staff, the residents for your continued engagement on this project. This has been going on a long time. There's still a lot of excitement in our community about this project. And that I continue to see that on a daily basis. There's a lot of questions that come up. When is this project going to get built? And there's a lot of excitement. So thank you for your continued work on this. You mentioned the focus groups back in 2017, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of those focus groups. And a lot of those elements that were in those initial conversations are still in this project. And the phase 2 incorporates even that kind of idea even more so. And so I think that that's a job well done in keeping those elements still in here. We've heard a little bit of the idea of kind of learning from our past, our history, and ensuring that we don't make the same kind of mistakes or investments into a boondoggle that we've done in the past. And I think that we have some reassuring pieces here. We have, solid financials and solid assumptions for where we're going. We have the ability to say that we will have tenants coming through that will be great partners in this for the long term. We don't have the city, being on the hook for future monies. We don't have that debt that is going to, hover over this project. So I'm curious with that, and this may be a question for staff, is what is the anticipated life of this project without some type of major influx of investment? We're seeing that with the Flatirons Crossing Mall, got 20 years. We had said it was probably going to be about 15. We got 20 years out of it, and it's time for a reinvestment. So on this project, what is that anticipated life before a major influx of money?
I don't think it's as easy as that, Councilmember Schaap. I mean, we are, the conversations we're having and the planning is really for a 100-year project. So a major infusion, it'll be continuous. Joe and I were just talking with Jeff that the diversification of the project is really what makes it viable. And so kind of the standalone from the First Bank Center, although presented originally as multi-use, it really isn't, right? It's a standalone. So it's kind of it's a win or lose all take scenario, and this project isn't. So by having the mix of residential and the lingering and the stickiness and the housing and sustainability, it really is going to be built for a community of the future.
Great. I mean, I think that's really good to hear. I mean, I think that they're, instead of kind of this, kind of like with Flatirons Crossing Mall, that we kind of have this cash cow that sits out there and generates a lot of revenue for some time. This is going to be much more of a project where there's we're going to continue to see kind of how that moves throughout, and there's going to be that constant engagement with this project as opposed to just kind of letting it go and letting it generate a ton of revenue. And I think as Mr. Romine talked about, the hope is that this will be positive, revenue positive, but we anticipate that it will be at least revenue neutral. So I think that says a lot. I think that we have, in terms of those lessons learned, I think that we have a great team working on this from our development team as well as our staff team. So that gives me a lot of confidence going into this. We have had a lot of conversation about the lake, and I appreciate all the comments and questions that we've had. You checked off a lot of mine. The one thing that I still have a concern about, and part of this is because when we got back from our water tour, we came off the mountain in what was, a huge thunderstorm. We came down here and this whole, park area was flooded and water was flowing all over. So what kind of mitigations do we have to ensure that we don't have some type of flooding mess down here if we can get some type of rainstorm?
I'm going to ask Anna, actually. Part of the engineering that was done was really identifying those floodplains to locate the area of the lake that it would naturally be conducive to water. Anna, will you talk a little bit more about that? And Councilor Chef, to Councilmember Lindstedt's point about the connectivity, while Anna's up there talking about the floodplain piece. Anna, talk a little bit about the art, right?
The artery.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if council knows or not, but we have that original Broomfield sign. We looked at in years past, whether we redid the sign, but that sign is huge. Again, the pictures don't do it justice for actually the size of that. I mean, it is mammoth. And so when we were looking at the presentation, between Anna's artery with the heart of Broomfield, that's pretty. I mean, that in a long day's work, we all thought, and that's pretty cool. And then Anna, if you would just talk a little bit about the connectedness of kind of that pre-planning, not only from the trails, but going north, what that looks like as well, if you would please.
Great, thank you, City Manager Hoffman, Mayor Protem. So I'm probably going to ask Katie Allen, who happens to be here, our city and county engineer, to talk in more detail about the drainage, since that's a little outside of my area of expertise, but she definitely knows a lot. But I'm really excited to talk about the artery. So, because that's right where I am. So the artery is a connected trail that is being planned through Broomfield, really as a connection throughout the community. It's envisioned as a trail that connects specific places with interesting cultural elements, artistic elements, creative elements, to really create something that someone wants to walk along. And we have the amazing staff who came up with this name of the artery, kind of like drawing from the heart of Broomfield, that this is the artery. So how fantastic is it that the artery will connect to the heart of Broomfield sign in the Broomfield Town Square? So it's just the perfect extension of the planned first phase for the artery, which is, I believe it's just to the northeast of here, near the recreation center. So it's a great extension. The Broomfield Art Walk that the development team talked about could be a branch from that artery, and really eventually, like I said, it connects the whole community. So the idea is that this is a multimodal trail, and so it's kind of speaking to that connectedness, bringing in outside from this immediate area a way to get to the area by multimodal means, by the bike, by walking, e-bikes, whatever the situation is. So those are great connected elements, and I'm glad we got to have an opportunity to talk about it. And then I'll ask Katie to talk about the lake.
Katie, I apologize. Sister, I didn't see you sitting out there.
No problem. Katie Allen, City and County Engineer, and I feel a little bit like Kenny following Joe, with the engineering part. So I can talk, I think I can accurately talk about the overall drainage scheme and how it relates to the lake. And if I'm wrong, if you could hop up and correct me. So the City Park Channel flows from the northwest to the southeast, hugging the Combs Drive. And the City Park Channel and floodplain will be modified with this project to narrow up. And actually the lake is offline from that floodplain. And then additionally, the drainage system, due to the development, will be discharging to typical stormwater detention and water quality ponds, but then discharge back into City Park. There are three different elements when you talk about the lake versus the channel and flooding, and even just the typical site drainage stormwater pond. And so that's the general scheme. I don't know if you want to add to that, Tim?
Yes, one additional tidbit, she nailed it all. The one addition is the flooding you see in the park is designed to do that, to bring the water table up. So we are underway with a kilometer process with the Corps of Engineers to essentially design the floodway. And that includes channelization of the floodway so that you're not walking through puddles. You're just using the contour area. So we're remapping the way that stormwater table does come through the area. That helps.
It does help. Thank you. I think that was, seeing that, we had a ton of water come down at once, so there was quite the flood that was quite wide. I even went out there and, I didn't go in the water, but I went as close as I could to get video because it was quite, it looked like quite the river running through the middle of the park area. So it's good to hear about that. Thanks for the update on the artery. I do appreciate the comments from the public as well as commissioners, boards and commissions, as well as council on sustainability and affordable housing and the housing diversity. I support all of those. There's a lot in this memo packet. And I think our developer said that there's a lot that wasn't even covered. And I think that one of those pieces was the school impact and the conversations with those schools. So I think as we continue to go through kind of the future residential pieces of this, that's something I'm going to be interested in hearing updates about. Is what do those conversations look like with those school districts to see what the impact is going to be. The long range financial plan. One of the questions I had, or actually the question I had on this, was this, this really kind of acts differently than our traditional development. So we could say, well, we're going to change this development from commercial to mixed use, and this is going to be the impact of long range financial plan. But because of the revenue sharing, how does that shift that long range financial plan? The numbers that we have here, are those what's set? Or does this make that long range financial plan different?
I think part of the conversation, and Jeff can step up and fill in the gaps. So when he says revenue neutral, other than we hadn't contemplated developing that entire area in the long range financial plan. So there wasn't we had planned for X number of retail and some residential, or the vice versa. So go ahead, Jeff.
Sure, Mayor Pro Tem and council members, as City Manager Hoffman was pointing out, really what that comment within the memo is that originally was designed or originally planned within the long range financial plan for it to be solely commercial. And so what you see is that additional cost that's represented there is going on that second, third, and fourth levels of those buildings and bringing in the housing. So that's the additional cost that's coming through related to our full services. And as you recall from that briefing that Brenda gave you back, I want to say it's roughly 4 or 5 months ago, that's how we do it. And so there's an analysis occurring there. So part of what we're trying to do in the long-range financial plan and as well as the modeling is to start to recognize the multi-use behavior so that we're not just attributing everything to first floor and start to encourage that densification and the multiple use. So that's effectively what we tried to see in the memo. Going back to what City Manager Hoffman pointed out is at the same time, there is this incentive that's being provided, and that's been calculated into the way that we do things because that agreement's already in place, as we pointed out. It's been in place for a little over a year now, and so we anticipated what that was going to look like. That revenue that's generated on the retail side has already been calculated, and so all we have to do is bring in the cost side. So it does affect it a little bit, but what we believe is because there's the fuller completeness of the development, it will actually drive up our revenue positively. But from the modeling simplification approach, it does. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yes, thank you for that. So the last comment I have is regarding the kind of the orientation of this development. So we have down in Arista, we have the transit-oriented development, and the way I see this is that this is going to be a multimodal oriented development. And because one of the reasons is because we don't have great transit opportunities to serve this. So we are going to have to amp up those other multimodal opportunities. So as you were talking about the artery, I thought I don't want to end up with a clogged artery. We can't have that congestion sitting around on Main Street and around this area because it will just kill projects. So we have to continue to think of what are those multimodal options and how are we driving those to ensure that we have that. Public transit is going to be a piece of that, but also the traffic studies are going to be important to ensure that things continue to move around this area. So my last question, and hopefully it's not too long of an answer, but when we have traffic studies completed, how do those traffic studies match up with what we see in reality after that project is completed and within the 3 to 5 years following the completion of that project? How do those stand up? How do those compare? And are those pretty legitimate? So, the basis is if we get a traffic study for this project, are we going to see that reality come after the project's completed and in those 3 to 5 years after the project is completed?
Katie, you're in.
Take a stab at it. Thank you. So Anna Brinzetti, planning director. I think I forgot to introduce myself last time, so I apologize. But so our studies are based on sound traffic engineering principles and standards. I don't know that we necessarily go back to a traffic study and look to see if it was valid, but we do parking or traffic counts. We definitely look at that in the future. I think that we do a great job with planning for our future developments. I don't know if Katie and Ellen, our city and county engineer, wants to add more, but it's based on traffic engineering standards. So reviewed not just by the traffic engineer that's submitted by the developer, but also by our own staff as well.
And while Ms. Allen is walking up here, kind of the basis for this is we had some public comment that was concerned about the traffic level. So, if we submit a traffic study and it says, hey, we believe that there is going to be a major increase in congestion in traffic, is that going to be the reality?
So back to the traffic studies, I think the traffic studies are very sound, but they're all based on their assumptions of the land use and trip generation. So there's a fundamental change to a development, then there can be a fundamental change to the traffic volumes that you see. But if the land use, the number of restaurants and the number of businesses are consistent, then I think we have very accurate traffic studies.
Thank you so much. That's all I have for your program.
Thank you, Councilmember Schiff. Next is Councilmember Hinkle.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. I know it's I've had these long conversations. It's been really long when Councilmember Lynn said he's been waiting for his whole life. He was 5 years old, I think, maybe when this came out. I absolutely enjoy having Councilmember Lindstedt on council though, because he actually does provide a lot of youth view to this, and many other people who have lived experience, with meeting affordable housing too. So when we speak from up here from youth and those needs, we speak from experience, and that's why we were elected. Thank you for the presentation tonight. Thank you to staff. This has been a long time coming. I know that we've kind of touched on, the hot topic of the long-range financial plan, and that's been sort of one of the key issues, I guess, right, on the packet. I would like to push back just even on the way that we calculate our long-range financial plan. A big part of that is yes, we can plan for, retail in a certain area, but that retail is nothing without the people. And it's nothing without a diversity in housing stock. And we've learned that. So, as we push forward and how we're communicating what it means to have a great long-range financial plan, I want to make sure that people know that people are of value too, and that housing being here is of value. I do want to echo affordability for families to own. We do need a diverse housing stock. I also want to go towards sustainability to go all electric, and I will tell you why. I did visit the GeoCities down in, I think it was Arvada. And one of the key issues there is that there was a guy there that actually used to work at ExxonMobil. And he actually worked on the climate issues, and he finally got fed up. And he's like, I think we're just giving lip service to people. So he had a real gut check with ExxonMobil. And he said, actually, I switched jobs, I switched careers. He's still working on climate work, but guess what? He owns a house that has no gas. And there's a huge reason for it for him. And so he doesn't have a gas bill, like literally no house gas bill. He has no bill for his car to pay for gas to go anywhere. He fills up once a week. He has 2 electric cars. He works from home, and a lot of times the air inside his home that's really well built is actually better than the outside. If you can believe it. It used to be the other way around. And unfortunately, with climate change and our wildfires, we've had issues with that. So I really do want to push on sustainability and making sure that we're including sort of younger families. I used to be a high school teacher. We used to teach about climate. And I know that for sure that's important to people who are younger, up and coming and want to live in those neighborhoods too. I really think the financial viability of this is going to be including people of all ages. I really do believe that. We have people who are going to be living there who are older, but we also have families in my ward, particularly in Ward 5, who are just extremely nervous now about not having parking at that library, or they feel like they don't. I love multimodal transport. We're getting a 1 and a 3-year-old on a bike to go to the library, and then staying there for a long time is going to be an issue if the water feature is just the lake too. Because I know 1 and 3-year-olds want to jump into a lake, they want to play. That's great. It can also be very dangerous too. I remember spending most of my younger parenthood saving the life of my child all the time around water. And so I really want to push back a little bit on what water feature we offer to those ages, because they will tell you they will go to story time at the library and they'll stick around for lunch until it's time for nap time and head back. So I do want to make sure that we're keeping young families in mind. I wrote all my notes on my phone here, trying to be sustainable. I did have questions on who was paying for the water and upkeep on the lake, so I'm thankful for others who asked that question. I also want to note that as we talk about, the financial, I guess, boundaries that we're having and all these ideas, a lot of times, even just in our planning, that could be, financially sound. So instead of paying for lights that are ground lights at night, we could have a pathway instead of that striped pathway. It actually does bother me, Councilmember Lynn. We could have a pathway that absorbs light during the day and possibly glows at night. There are materials that do that. And that could be part of a sustainable, way of lighting things. Another question that I had people that were concerned about the way that the property is just shaped, and I know we can't do much about that. But I wonder too about what is it going to look like as far as shadows go in between those 2 buildings and temperatures and those sorts of things. People were worried about, is going to be too cold in there because you have the sun on the east rising on that side and then, setting on the west. What is that temperature going to look like? And those sorts of things. But yeah, is there any plans? I do want to ask that question. Is there any plans to sort of include, any sort of water that, I remember, I thought there was some sort of like water trickle that was gonna go into the lake for younger kids too. I do want to ask that question, and then engineering wise with the temperature on that pathway, yeah.
I don't know if there's like, been any studies on the actual temperature of the pathway. That Paseo worked on it, the Art Walk is wider than you'd imagine. I think it was around 60 feet wide and perhaps up to 80 feet. Building. At its tightest, it's 60 feet wide. So this room plus another 20 feet. So it's actually pretty wide.
Okay.
But you do have some buildings that are starting 4 stories at 120 around you. So something we could look at is some shadow studies. There's a lot of how it's going to feel. So we'll look into that. And then you asked about the water.
Yeah, so I know in North Glen, there's that big lake there, and then they have like a splash park. And that really helps the younger kids to feel like they're in the water without actually being in the water.
Right. We have a splash pad, a mountain feature, if you will. And
I thought. Okay, I want to make sure. Some people said that they didn't see that, and I thought there was.
Yeah, my kids love those too.
Yeah.
You know, there's one out front of Union Station, which I was a big part of, and it's as simple as objects, and the kids go bonkers over it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I just think, you know, as a city and county, we do need to be cognizant about the families that live in Ward 5 that want that accessibility, because they'll stay and they'll pay for lunch and snacks and all that good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Henkel. We have Councilmember Cohen next.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just have 3 areas of questions, but I guess I need to start off by in defense of water. I think I looked at this when I was on Open Space 2020, what the year that was, and we mostly focused on the lake and trail around it and accessibility. But more in terms of the market viability, the lake itself strikes me as the most distinctive feature that differentiates this development from all the other developments in the area, like Old Town and Fort Collins, Old Town Arvada, Larimer Square, Fuller Street, Cherry Creek, Rhino. None of them have a water feature. And to me, that's the one thing that makes this one stand out or could be a destination for Broomfield compared to all the others. So I do think it's something we want to protect and enhance as much as possible and make it appealing. I'm not too concerned that people need to swim in it, but just having that access and ability to be around water, I think is extremely appealing. So I hope we keep that. And I wanted to follow up on Councilmember Lynch's comment about connectivity. I don't know what the artery is. I must have slept through that meeting in open space. But I do know there's issues of connectivity that maybe should be prioritized as this go forward to ensure that all parts of the community can get to this by bike or scooter or walking easily and not just by car. I know there's a trail that runs along 120th behind the King Supers on Sheridan, behind Broomfield Square or whatever it's called, Plaza at where Jack's is and behind the Walmart, that is blocked by Sheridan. It needs an underpass. It's pretty expensive. There's some property that stores liquor that blocks it, and some other barriers to connectivity. Maybe we need to look very carefully at all the other connections from the north, south, east, west, how we can make it as easy as possible once this thing is built out for people to get to here without going to the car by a car. I did have one question going forward related to that, which was traffic flow. I didn't see in that, and perhaps I didn't miss it. What was the plan? What is the perceived flow of how people would enter and exit this development, and from what each direction? Mainly concerned that traffic around that area is congested and fast. I don't know if there's thoughts of how to slow traffic on 120th, how people could reasonably in and out. Spaders were probably not a viable conduit. We've heard from the residents that Maine is already getting heavy with congestion. So I'd be interested in the future seeing a really thought out traffic flow plan of how people are going to get in and out of this, in addition to the wayfinding plan. I did want to ask you, based on your experience with other development of this sort, what your marketing theory is in terms of the retail. From the housing perspective, to me, it does seem like a slam dunk in the sense that this is a housing development with incredible amenities within walking distance. I can't think of another housing development that has a rec center, a pool, a library, an auditorium, open space, trail, all within a few feet. So, but I am curious as to the issues that Councilmember Evans and Mayor Castriota brought up in terms of economic viability going forward. With all the changes in retail, do you have a theory in terms of who you would want to attract? Are we looking at homegrown restaurants? Are we looking at specific types of retail, national, local, that would make this a distinctive destination?
Happy to answer that, Councilman Cohen and Joe Boster's. We made a commitment early on in this project that it would be 100% local. So that was what we learned in the focus groups. That's what came out. People out here said, we have enough change, we got enough of that, we just want local. Our company is probably known, probably our most preeminent reputation as developers is that we do local stuff. So I led the change of Larimer Square, I don't know, it was 15 years ago. We changed Larimer Square from being a primarily chain driven. There was Talbot's and, Williams Sonoma, and the list went on, 9 West, line one. We made a decision back then, we're going to convert it to be all local. So it would really be a local attraction rather than a tourist attraction. It changed over almost 100% of the tenants to local. There's still a few changes in there, but it's primarily local. Our Hangar 2 project in Lowry is our local. Our Eastbridge project in Central Park, Stapleton neighborhood is all local. It's really what we do. And so it's a good fit for this project. But the key to this project really is that we're going to give fabulous retail space to these local tenants that includes expansive patios, waterfront space at below market cost. That's the deal. That's what's going to attract the locals in. And we'll curate them very carefully to make sure that we get this great mix, great local coffee house, an ice cream shop, and some farm to table restaurants. We had in our focus groups, we had a very specific list of what people wanted and in the order that they wanted them in terms of priorities, right? And so we already really sort of know who we want. We already have a list of interested tenants, believe it or not, even though we're still some years out from actually delivering space to them. But if we put the mix together right, that really makes it the financial viability of the project. But we think, and then we also, with the market hall, we have the opportunity to incubate smaller tenants who could eventually grow into some of those bigger spaces, provided that they're successful. That's one of the great things you get with that kind of space is people can come in for a very low threshold of expense. And if they're successful, then we're going to grow them into other spaces. So it becomes really sort of this great cycle of that just helps grow them and sustain them, and hopefully they can become a permanent part of it. I hope that answers your question.
Do you also see the ideas of sustainability and being a 50-year forward development? So market appeal.
I'm so glad you asked that question. The thing is that when you build something like a mall, it's like a single purpose thing. That it has no resiliency. When you build something that is resilient, like what we're doing here with many different uses, different types of uses, it can last virtually forever. I'll give you the example of Larimer Square. Larimer Square was built as a mercantile street in 1860. It's still a mercantile street. Now, investments have been made in it over the years, but it's all been private. It's been a little bit of a tip on a few small pieces of it 20 or 30 years ago. But if you build them to be authentic, real places where you have all the mix, the residents, the retail, the services, I mean, that's the real world. I mean, that's what every main street in every corner of the world is really all about. And that's what we're building here. And that's what makes it resilient.
One last question, just curious in terms of how maybe this has been discussed before, the ripple effect. If this development is successful, what other effects do we expect, or what developments would we realistically expect to are surrounded. We're along 120th. I can't imagine Advance Auto Parts will stay, or doesn't that
Well,
fit too well, but maybe it
You
does.
know, the thing is that all of those retailers fulfill a specific need, and that need's not gonna go away. Now, you do hope that a project like this will be a catalyst for positive change. Certainly, you can imagine that other retailers, for example, might view 120 differently than they do today in terms of whether or not it's a suitable location. So you can imagine that happening. But the other thing is, I think from a long-range planning standpoint, as other redevelopments occur in the area, what both private developers and what you all do going into the future, you're going to constantly be thinking about, we need this new connection. We need this thing changed over here. Private developers are going to be doing the same thing. So you hope that this catalyst becomes, it starts this wonderful, positive cycle of changes that occur as a result of it.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Cohen. Next, we have Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Got my notes stuck here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I want to start by, this is a lot of really great comments tonight, an amazing project. I just want to highlight on some of the things maybe I haven't heard and reiterate a couple of them. But I love it when we're thinking about this as designing for the future. And with that, as the state is addressing the GHG emission reduction targets right now, and we know we're moving that direction with high ozone and other issues in this area and air quality, that sustainability piece becomes so critical. And I get it from so many constituents that we really need to lead by example and work in this direction. And I think that, doing this building electrification, if that's possible, is really critical. And if we can eliminate or minimize the natural gas hookups and plan for the future switch, that's going to be an investment well spent. And here's where we can show that we can move to a sustainable future and lead by example. I know that sometimes at cost, but if we actually look into the cost feasibility, when you start to look at the cost of going carbon free and the upfront cost versus the overall lifetime savings, you might actually find out, I think a couple other council members have kind of noted this as well, that it might actually be more affordable than we realize, and this might be the time to do it. So I would love to see a little bit of, we can look into that a little bit more on what it would really take to, maybe we don't go the full way of the GEOS community, but taking some of those steps and moving in that direction would be amazing. And then heard a lot about pedestrian friendly and public transportation, and in Ward 4 we have Anthem Ranch, who have been, one of their priorities for so long has been ease of access to transportation. Above 144th, we don't have a lot of bus rapid transit options. And so looking at how can we get the Anthem Ranch residents down and the Anthem Highlands residents, and we think about baseline just to the east of us. And that is coming, about the same time, and that we're hoping to move that into this realm where we reduce this vehicle dependency, and we really need that access from baseline to the Broomfield Town Square as well. And the more I heard about the residents living close by who are concerned about traffic congestion, it just reiterates why this is so critical to ensure that we have those bus options. And also there's a note in the this strategic initiatives document here that with recommendations about not every person who's going to live there is going to need a car, and that you shouldn't be paying as much if you're not relying on a car and you're not parking a car in that facility. So I think that's actually an important program to look into, is if you're saying I'm not going to have a car there, then you pay less than the other residents. That's an amazing step in the right direction for these residents who can actually break free from the vehicle. And there was also a note in there kind of buried about the car share program. And I just, there's an article recently on the EV car share program. I think it was in Boulder or something, where it's parked in the garage and you can rent it and you can actually use that car. And that would be something really good to look at when you can't rely on the bus transportation, the multimodal transportation, you could actually reserve that car for your uses as needed, or multiple cars. And then looking at the artwork, there was one of the examples showed little like red ball things with shadows, and you start to get into the interactive artwork when you bring your kids down. And Councilmember Henkel was kind of talking about like the kids coming down there. And I can just envision my kids many years ago when they were little hopping on those, and so the more interactive the artwork, the more engaged with the little kids, and we as adults can watch other people's little kids now engaging with it. That's just going to, my kids aren't going to do that anymore. But it just brings a livelihood. So the more they can climb on it and play on it, and it's in the middle of the sidewalk, that's actually really cool. And then. Oh, and the amphitheater, we didn't really talk about that tonight. It's still, I saw it, it's still in the packet and in the works, that we were talking about that. And, you know, if we can enhance and build upon the amphitheater that's already near the library, that I've gone to shows there, watched my own daughters dance right by there by the lake, and it's just an amazing experience. So the more we can bring that in with live music and dancing and entertainment, that's another feature that just will draw people to there and want to make them stay longer. And I will second Councilmember Cohen and others that have noted, this water feature really is critical to the project. We keep hearing it. I really think we need to, continue to focus on that. And I have a question here. This is probably for our own staff. So we have we've heard concerns about this lake feature, but there's got to be other man-made lakes in Broomfield that are representative of something like this pond, right? Sienna Reservoir is bigger, but is there something comparable where we already see the results, that there's not geese on it, there's not mosquitoes, and it works? Are there comparable examples?
There are not.
Okay. Okay, so the other ones are all not as enlarged.
Well, we certainly don't have ponds, or lakes, and that at least you're not supposed to be in swimming around. You can fish in them, but you're not supposed to be in them. So that will be vastly different, right? This will be a, stay, play, eat, splash kind of environment. But as Joe indicated on the outset, the water feature is a must. So it's not really a qualifier or a decision about the water feature, because that's the piece of the puzzle that makes this viable.
Okay, and we have that confidence that we can make this work. It sounds like there's already a lot of thought to the mitigation methods, and that'll be good. Okay. And then here's something else I've been hearing a lot from constituents that we also need to consider here is the xeriscape and trying to reduce watering of medians. And the more we can reduce the irrigation, and especially as so often the irrigation system is running on the roads, and that's just become a comment that I hear so often. So definitely looking into that. And then I guess that's about it. And if we can, and I share the concerns of others that we do need to minimize our financial risk and make informed decisions, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward. So I very much appreciate and look forward to next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. So before moving forward and checking to see if any of my colleagues have any brief follow-up comments, I just want to make sure that I was clear on and maybe for anyone who's still listening in, clear on the actual cost of Broomfield of this project. So, and at the risk of vastly oversimplifying, you said was a complex topic. It is my understanding that so far we have upfront approximately, I think this was like $1 million in the two agreements that we've already made with the developers. And then the other cost that we would have upfront would be just the cost of the land that we're dedicating to this project, which was roughly $20 million. And then the third piece of that would be the tax sharing agreements that we have going forward, which currently we're capped at $20 million at least for the one portion of it. And then beyond that, those are sort of the upfront costs, and I'm accurate with that. Thunder. That's the last time I'm going to say that.
At this point, I guess I'm tendering my written out. Mayor, council members, You summarized it exactly correct. We have spent $3.6 million to acquire the Safeway. We've spent $900,000, or we have authorized up to $900,000. $400 has been spent. $500 has been authorized. It has not been fully spent. That is what we've put in so far. Within that 3.6, that is part of the land transfer. It is originally valued at 0 because obviously there's sustained value to it. But when they acquire it, it will have an assumed value of $20 to $21 million. Our maximum cap right now in our development agreement is for $20 million. So you summarized it very effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. And then, of course, we have the ongoing costs, I'm assuming, of servicing the residential and the commercial that are going to be located there. But I think, as you mentioned, Jeff, that this will be, at least somewhat revenue positive going forward over the years. And then, I guess that's great to hear. But I would argue that the value obviously goes beyond just the money that the project's bringing in. I think, as was mentioned somewhere, that this is going to create that sense of place that the residents of Broomfield have been longing for a number of years, and it's going to provide those local shops, restaurants, and additional housing that the city really needs and longs for. Okay, awesome. So with that, I will see if we do have any additional brief comments from our fellow colleagues here. I know we have one from Councilmember Tessier.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have one question. It was something to do with one of the residents who called in about getting a permit. And Anna, I was hoping that you might be able to talk about that process. So those residents who are living there now and want to kind of protect their space.
Councilmember Tessier, Broomfield does have a few areas where we have parking permit programs in place. And it would be anticipated that in the future, as the area develops, that would be something that staff can look at with the residents in the area.
Awesome. So staff will actually go out to the residents, or the residents would need to come to staff?
Typically, it's generated by interest from the neighborhood that's interested in the parking process. We've already heard from a number of residents. I think it's just kind of been understood that as the area develops,
they know
we will likely continue to hear that as a raised concern. We know that that's something we need to look at.
Awesome, for sure. I just want to make sure the caller got that, and hope you're still thank you so much, Anna. And then, yeah, I just feel like, we have a huge obligation here as the landowners in the city and county of Broomfield to make this work really well for our future. And I look forward to seeing what is coming up, and hopefully you'd be willing to work with a developer that does nonprofit housing to get that sustainability in there. If it's just 50 or so units, I would really like to see that. We are in dire need of that, and the sustainable approach, looking at it a little lifetime versus just upfront costs. So appreciate everybody's comments. Thank you. That is all.
Thank you, Councilmember Tessier. Councilmember Groom.
I just had a follow-up question in regards to the existing buildings that are there that are not owned by the city of Broomfield or are not part of this development. Will they be required to update their buildings or facilities? It seems like it will be kind of night and day between the new building facilities and the existing. So have we reached out to them to see what upgrades need to be done to blend in?
Short answer is yes. Conversations are still underway with the adjacent property owner, in particular the two strip retail buildings that are attached to the Safeway. But that is the intent, that we incorporate them into a project and tie the architecture, including a replatting of their building, new facade, so it looks coherent and works together.
And so is that their financing or?
Great question. It's all part of the negotiation.
Okay.
In exchange for perhaps, joining our business improvement district and paying the same fees that the other businesses in this community would be paying. There may be a financial exchange that would help them.
Perfect, I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gruen. Mayor Castriotto.
Thank you, Mayor Pro-Tem. I just have a couple of quick follow-ups too. Regarding the for sale townhomes, do we have a price point for those yet? Are those going to be in the affordable category? Well, 80% AMI or less?
Yeah, we will not be developing those ourselves, so we'll be partnering with another developer who specializes in building that kind of product. So we don't really know where they're going to want to set the price point yet.
Fair enough. I thought it might be a little early. And I guess my next question is for staff in terms of staffing this project and personnel. Do we have in addition to the cost, the hard costs, the soft costs, and human capital?
No. So we're going to be, again, the level of work that's on engineering and planning for these types of projects is immense. So the parallel path, what is best for Broomfield is to do flat irons to get some revenue diversified and coming, and what's best for the community for the Broomfield Town Square is to get that project moving as well. So we're going to be doing this in parallel. So I would absolutely foresee, it's similar, council, to building the BCC, although we have someone else building it, a project manager, to make sure that everybody stays on track, that, kind of the follow-up piece. So yeah, I would definitely foresee between those two projects that we certainly have to be adding some positions to Anna and Katie's department.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any additional comments? Seeing none, I want to thank Tim and Joe for coming down here tonight and joining us and giving us this presentation. It's great having you guys as partners on this project. It's really been something that I've been excited about. I mentioned this to Joe numerous times. For about 6 years now, one of the first things that I did look at when I was on City Council, I took a tour of Larimer Square and had this pitch for local shops and local businesses, and I was sold from the start. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this project progress over the next couple of years and hopefully break some ground before I am out of here. And I was really happy tonight also just to see that there has been a lot of behind the scenes progress. I know there's a lot that's, we don't hear and see it sometimes, and the public doesn't hear and see it sometimes, but I think you did make it clear today that there is a lot going on behind the scenes, but there has been progress over the past year or so. I just want to make sure you guys did hear some of the concerns today, early on, regarding the for sale units, a lot of concerns about the sustainability aspects of the project, traffic concerns, and then, of course, always affordable housing is an issue now in Broomfield. So just keeping an eye on those going forward, and looking forward to seeing the PUD and the STP as it makes its way towards us. And again, hoping to see some groundbreaking here in the next, was it end of 2022? Is that the time frame? Awesome. Okay, well, thank you again for being here tonight. Quickly. Need to officially close this thing up. That concludes the agenda items for this evening's study session. There being no further business, the study session is